All right, I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting for Thursday, October 1st, 2020. Would everybody please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I love it. Every time I love it. Love it. Puts a smile on my face every time. Linda, would you please call the roll?
Present. Here. Here.
Here.
Full house.
Our director left to find out if we had any changes, so I'm going to operate that we do not.
I'm not aware of any changes.
Yeah. All right, no changes to the agenda. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes from September?
Yes.
Move to accept the minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right. Now we get into the fun part, why everybody's here. It's fun to see more people in the audience again. If this is your first time here, just so you know, what will happen, I'll give you a rundown of how the meeting will work. Staff will get the opportunity to present the agenda item. The commission will get the opportunity to ask any questions of staff. Once that's complete, we will invite the applicant and/or their representative to come forward to answer any questions, add any additional information that maybe they see fit. Once that's completed, we will open it up to the public, and they will be able to make a statement in regards to their in regards to that agenda item. Once that is complete, if there's any clarification that we need from staff and/or from the applicant, we will bring them back forward at that time, just to make sure. And then other than that, we will start with the first agenda item.
Yes.
Yeah, I did.
I said here.
We were all present.
James isn't here, obviously.
Don't worry. I appreciate that, though. I've been known to skip one or two of these. All right, so first up, public hearing and consideration of request by Rox Homes, preliminary replat DSA 20-00134. Mr. Horn.
Good evening. Rox Homes is requesting approval of a preliminary plat to create 3 separate parcels from Lot 4 of the C.G. Hauk plat located at 784 West McMurray Boulevard. You can see the location shown there at Schultz and McMurray. This is just an overview of the plat real quick. You can see it's one lot outlined in the red, and they're going to divide it into the 3 lots shown there. We're going to cover each of the review criteria quickly. The first one is conformance with the general plan. The subject site is designated in community center in the city's general plan. The site zoned R1, which is single-family residential. The R1 zoning is not listed as an appropriate zoning category within the community center category. However, that zoning was established prior to the adoption of the 2020 general plan, and the site is permitted to develop utilizing the existing zoning. Next item is conformance with the zoning. The 3 proposed lots are in conformance with all the requirements for property in that R1 zone, meeting the minimum lot width, the minimum lot depth, and the size of the lot. And setbacks will be evaluated at the time of the single-family home submittal. As for drainage, no drainage was provided with the original plat of the subdivision. That was platted 100 years ago. So I don't know if they were thinking about it back then. So in regards to that, each lot will be providing individual retention basins at time of development. As far as utilities go, utilities and infrastructure are available to all the lots. Since this subdivision is not proposing 6 or more lots, or it hasn't been replatted within 10 years, a certificate of assured water supply is not required by the Arizona Department of Water Resources. To accommodate the development on these lots, a water service agreement will have to be entered between the developer and Arizona Water Company. There is an existing 8-inch water line and a 12-inch sewer line that's running in Schultz Street that will be used to serve the properties. Access to public roads, the proposed lots will access North Schultz Street. There is sidewalk that will be required on the south parcel along McMurray. The parcels along Schultz already have sidewalk in place. The next step they'll have to go to is get a final plat approval by the city council. We did provide notification to all properties within 300 feet. We published in the Casa Grande Dispatch, and we did not require a sign for this. We did not receive any comments. In conclusion, staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the preliminary replat to create 3 separate parcels from Lot 4 of the CG Halk Plat, which is DSA 20-00140. And one other note, we did have conditions in the staff report originally. Those conditions are required by code anyway. It was more of a reminder for the applicant. So those conditions have been removed from the recommendation tonight. Any questions?
No questions, Rosette? No. Great. At this time, I would invite the applicant and/or their representative, if they choose, to come forward. There you go. Can you state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, Clint Shear, 205 East State Drive, Casa Grande, 5122.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here this evening.
I just wanted to state that with this, 3 lots, the power lines there are all overhead, so we're going to go a little extra. We're going to take all the power lines down and go underground. We own the parcel north of that, and we're in the process of developing a more of an affordable housing apartment project that we're going to be coming forth after we develop these 3 houses. I think it's tentatively 54 units.
Perfect. Any questions for the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Member Benedict.
And I hear you saying these are intended to be residential lots?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you for being here.
Mm-hmm.
Happy birthday to the little one.
Yeah, that's why I was a little late.
That's all right. All right, at this time, I would invite anybody from the public who would like to speak on this agenda item to come forward. Seeing nobody? I will-
Yes.
We got
Oh,
one.
sorry about that. Yep.
Come on up, sir.
I'm shorter than him. My name is Dino Aguirre, and I'm kind of a little bit concerned.
Can we get your address real quick?
715 West McMurray Boulevard.
Thank you.
I was concerned a little bit about what you said about the homes and what the man said about retention basins, like close to each home, or each home is going to have a retention basin. What are you going to do with mosquitoes? I have a retention basin right next to my lot. Okay? That retention basin belongs to the city. The city does not do anything for that retention basin. They don't take care of mosquitoes. I asked one time and they said it was too much water. Okay, what's the retention basin gonna do across there from Schultz? How are they gonna control mosquitoes or any kind of animals that go through there? Another thing too, whenever they open up Schultz, and they also said they were gonna build like a small industrial thing there on Schultz, which is fine with me, except that there's one thing. I have 18-wheelers coming right there, parked close to my house, across the street there on Schultz, and excuse me for being this way. They don't make stop signs, or the stop signs that are there, they don't work. I hate to put the police department in this kind of a situation, but they don't patrol that much. My question is, why? Why is there no patrols? There's a lot of racing on Schultz. There's a lot of racing between Crane and Schultz on McMurray. Why is any of that stuff being taken care of? Do we have enough officers to go through that, to patrol once in a while? One time I called the police department, gave them the colors of the cars that were drag racing through there. They came over and parked their cars across my house. They were looking on Schultz. They never looked about 100, 200 foot behind them to Hawk Street. That's where the cars came out. They never saw them. They never stopped them. None of that. So patrolling with 3 more homes there, what would you be doing? Are they going to hire another officer or 2 officers except just for that? Are they going to, is that going to be an 18-wheeler route for them to go from that little industrial park that they have over there on Schultz, like between Schultz, 13th and 12th Street? Are they going to monitor that or check it out?
So I think Dwayne Itel is our traffic engineer, and he's on the call, and as well as staff. I think what we can do is at least instruct staff, because we can't really comment because we're not the police. We're just here for the zoning. But we can definitely have staff reach out to the different departments involved and at least have them make note to see if there's maybe some additional patrol or different things that we can do to help mitigate some of that. Because if that's happening, I'm sure we would all like to see that stopped.
Okay.
And so we will have staff follow up with the police department as well as Dwayne, our traffic engineer, maybe just kind of look at traffic in that area and see if there's anything that we might be able to do. Okay?
Okay, now, one more question and I'll
Yep.
sit down. I
Yeah,
promise. What can you come up with how big the retention basins are gonna be? Because I understand that it's gonna be like on each home. How big are they gonna be? And are they gonna be able to control that? That, it's got nothing to do with the police. It will have to do with
Yeah. So,
I can take that.
okay.
So, so each of the individual homes that's going to have a retention basin, the basins will be relatively small. It's based on the developed flows and how much structures and pavement you have on the lot. They are required to drain within 36 hours, which is helpful in eliminating the mosquito problem.
I don't wanna interrupt you, but they said that about mine.
So if
And-
that's not,
and mine is pretty close to an acre in size. Sometimes when it rains and it gets half full, at least half full, it's just left alone. It'll drain down a little bit, and then the area on the bottom once it gets down to about 6 or 8 inches of water, everything starts turning black. I've been up there. Once the mosquitoes start, I can't go out if it rains a little bit. You know, I'm not complaining just for me, but I'm complaining for all the people around there because if it's like half full, there's kids in the area, in the neighborhood, they'll go over and get foam, they'll get plywood, and they use it for going up and down. It's a recreation area from that. They used to have like a cable fence, but they couldn't go through there. That's gone. There's nothing there. I'm just worried about what those small retention basins are gonna be.
Yeah.
Once it gets soaked and all of that, excuse me for saying, I'm not trying to be about, the water won't drain.
So I think what we can do, the individual lots, we can't really speak in depth to because they're not being developed yet. They'll have to come forward with information about how much water they need to take on. So that's gonna be a difficult one, but I think just to, not to kind of push it down the road, but I think maybe we can just have staff look into which department might check into this retention basin in the area to see, because sometimes if there's dry wells, they get clogged. There may be something we can do to improve that potentially. So we can have them look into that. But at this time, it'll just be in regards to the replatting of those 3 lots.
Well, I was just worried about,
Yep.
you know, when you guys said retention basins and stuff, it's like, you also have a canal through there. Are you guys gonna close it off or what's it gonna do? Is it still gonna be a shortcut from Schultz to Thornton?
So this is on the other side of the road. So if you can see the screen where it's the yellow highlighted area.
It's on the west side of Schultz off of McMurray,
This is on the east side.
west side.
No, what we're talking about though is on the east side of Schultz and McMurray. It's the northeast corner. And so it's just a small little lot, as shown on the screen. And so it doesn't have anything to do with the canal and the stuff on the west side.
No, but if you could, I understand that you're gonna build like 3 homes on the Joe Alsa, it used to be Joe Alsa's area?
This is only on the east side. I don't know, we don't have owner information, but this is
Okay.
on the east side of the property where it's gonna butt up against, I think, another residential property that's existing.
Yeah, there's a residence, like off of
Probably
Melrose.
right where the stop sign is at the T. The T in the road, right?
Yeah.
So right on the, if you're at that stop sign, on your right-hand side is where those 3 lots are, not across the street in that big
Oh,
open
okay,
area.
okay, then I misunderstood that.
Okay,
Sorry, sir. Sorry about
Yep.
the retention basins.
yeah, no worries at all.
Okay,
Okay?
got you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here this
I'll
evening.
leave you alone. Some of
Okay.
you know me, but you don't know me right now, okay? Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here.
Set it at the door.
Even my wife told me to get out of here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right. Anybody else like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing nobody, I will close the public portion and bring it back to the commission.
A motion to approve DSA 20-00140 with stated conditions.
Second. I'll second that.
Okay, we got a second.
Oh, you did? I didn't hear.
Discussion? The only discussion I would have is the conditions not needed. Does it matter if it's on there or not? It's part of code anyways. Okay,
No, there are no conditions.
no conditions. Okay. I have a motion and second. Linda, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Member Benedict?
Yes.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride?
Yes.
Chairman Miller.
Yes. Motion approved. Thank you for being here. Enjoy the evening. Next up, public hearing and consideration requested by TEJ Logistics. Major site plan DSA 20-00135 and final landscape plan DSA 20-00136. Mr. Horn.
So TEJ Logistics is requesting approval for a major site plan and final landscape plan to create a 3,250 square foot maintenance facility on about 1 acre of land located at 1481 North Grande Avenue. You can see the location down below. Just a quick overview of the site plan. It's pretty simple. You've got the repair and the office building shown here. You've got the parking, and it is a gated area. You see the landscape and the retention areas in the front and the rear of the property. And then you've got some additional truck parking overflow. When looking at the major site plan review criteria, we look at the following criteria. We're just going to concentrate on the key aspects of it tonight. The first one is the relationship of the plan elements to conditions both on and off the property. So the property is located within an industrial area of the city and is compatible with conditions both on and off the property. Quick overview of the surrounding is you've got the CEMEX plant to the west and then a ground maintenance facility to the south. Across the street you have Titan Formworks. You've got the UPPR office, or Union Pacific, and then you've got an undeveloped piece just to the north of it. So the next item is conformance to the city's general plan. The use is in conformance with the general plan. It's designated as manufacturing and industry, and it supports the I-1 zoning. Next is conformance to the zoning ordinance. The proposed use is in the I-1, or garden and light industrial zoning district. The plan conforms to all the I-1 zoning standards set forth within the zoning code. And then as regarding the landscape, the applicant submitted a final landscape plan in conjunction with the major site plan. It did meet all of our city requirements. They're providing a 7% of landscape area on the site. They're meeting the lot frontage of 1 tree and 3 shrubs for every 30 feet and 60% ground cover. And they meet the parking landscape requirements of 1 tree and 3 shrubs for every 5 spaces. You can kind of see the conceptual landscape plan, or the final landscape plan there. It all pushed out towards the street. In regards to notification, we met or exceeded all our requirements. We did not receive any inquiries or comments on this. So in conclusion, staff recommends the commission approve the major site plan DSA 20-00135 for the TEJ Logistics Maintenance Facility, and also staff recommends the commission approve the final landscape plan DSA 20-00136. Any comments or questions?
Questions for staff? All right. No questions for staff. Would the applicant and/or their representative like to come forward? Please state your name and address for the record.
Ole Solberg, 508 East Barris Place, Casa Grande. I'm representing TEJ, which is owned by Nancy and Jay. They're just really happy for this project, and staff's been fine to work with on this. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Great. Thank you for being here this evening. Any questions for the applicant? No? Awesome. Well, thank you. Making life easy on you tonight, Ole. At this time, I'd like to open it up to the public. Would anybody from the public like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing nobody, I will close the public portion and bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve major site plan DSA 20-00135 for TEJ Logistics Maintenance Facility.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If none, Linda, will you call the roll?
Yes. Member Benedict?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make another motion to approve the final landscape plan DSA 20-00136 for TEJ Logistics Maintenance Facility.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Linda, will you call the roll?
Yes. Member Benedict?
Yes.
Member Estrada?
Aye.
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes. Motion approved. Thank you again for being here. Congratulations. Good luck on the next steps of the project. All right. Next up, public hearing and consideration of request by Richmond American Homes. Major amendment to the Tamaron Planned Area Development, PAD Zone DSA 20-00140. As well as a housing product, DSA 20-00139. Mr. Gagliardi.
All right, good evening, Planning Commissioners. So this request is going to seem somewhat familiar to you.
Can you move that mic closer to your, a little bit maybe?
Is that better?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Richmond American has previously requested a PAD amendment and have requested approval of housing product within other portions of the Tamaron development. Some recent history is back in December of last year, a very similar request was in front of Planning Commission for 16 lots in Parcel E, 41 lots in Parcel C, and 28 lots in Parcel D. This evening is basically a very similar request, except they've been able to acquire the remaining vacant parcels or lots within Parcel D, which is the area on the screen just north of Cottonwood Lane in the southern portion of the Tamaron development. They're proposing the same 7 floor plans than what was approved previously back in December. Just a quick overview, they're all single story. There's 3 elevations per plan with 18 color schemes. The square footage range is just shy of 1,600 square feet and just over 2,200 square feet. And the lots are a minimum of 60 feet wide. When reviewing conformance with the design requirements, they comply with the 2003 residential design standards for planned area development. However, they do not comply with the Tamaron planned area development zone district design standards. They're more restrictive. As various builders have been acquiring lots within Tamaron, their option is to either comply with the more restrictive Tamaron PAD design requirements or request an amendment that can be considered by Planning Commission to essentially remove those more restrictive requirements. So what's more restrictive about the Tamaron PAD is it basically states that at least 1 floor plan per project will have the garage oriented towards the rear of the home as a standard feature. As you can see in the 2 pictures on the left, those are examples of homes that have a garage that's far recessed. In the Tamaron PAD, that's a requirement, at least 1 plan should have that design. When you look at, in general, the 2003 residential design standards for planned area developments, that's only an option. Another element of the Tamaron PAD that's more restrictive is that it says the number of floor plans using side-loaded garages as standard features will be greater than the required minimum. So per the 2003 residential design standards, only one floor plan has to offer a side-load garage. So that would mean in Tamaron, you'd have to provide at least 2 plans with side-loaded garages. What I mean by side-load is an example there on the far right. So what the PAD amendment would do is it would strike the above requirements, and by doing so, it would essentially make the design requirements exactly the same as the existing 2003 PAD residential design standards, which applies to many zone districts that are similar to Tamaron. Those PAD neighborhoods that were created in 2003 or onward mostly are subject to those. And this is also an opportunity to correct a typo within the PAD guide that is somewhat unclear, and it would just correct it to achieve its intended meaning. Now, just again, this was the same amendment process that was approved for Wade Journey Homes for its lots within the Tamaron parcels. And Richmond received the same approval back in December for its parcels. But now that they've acquired these additional 45 parcels, they have to receive approval for those specific lots. When considering planned area development amendments, this is considered a major amendment. However, it's the type of major amendment that Planning Commission can be the authority. It does not have to go to council. And these are the criteria that have to be evaluated when considering PAD amendments. The staff report gets into them in more detail, but essentially we found that it does comply, the request complies and meets all of these criteria. So staff is recommending that Planning Commission approve the PAD amendment. So that would have to be accomplished first before you can contemplate their submittal of the housing product, because they are not offering a floor plan with a garage that's far recessed. However, this is the same exact submittal that was approved for the other lots that Richmond owns within Tamaron. When reviewing the housing product, essentially if you approve the PAD amendment, it would be subject to the 2003 residential design standards, which have certain requirements in terms of the number of floor plans and elevations, certain requirements pertaining to roofs, garages, and patio covers. Staff has found that they have met all of those design requirements. In addition, they have to meet certain additional standards, and they are demonstrating that they're meeting specifically 4 additional requirements. There are 2 conditions that staff is recommending be associated with the housing product approval. The first one being that each site plan submitted for building permitting must indicate the plan number, elevation, and color scheme number. This helps when we're doing our review to ensure that there's compliance with the various 2003 design standards. And then the second condition pertains to the front yard landscaping. We require installation within 30 days of the home buyer's occupancy and maintained by the individual homeowner thereon in accordance with the landscape package. Regarding the public notification process, it followed that which is required by code, and there was no comments or inquiries received as a result of those notification efforts. So staff is making 2 recommendations this evening, the first for the PAD amendment, and the second is for the housing product, subject to those 2 conditions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Member Benedict.
Mr. Chairman, James, let's see, am I reading the right one here? Did we change the requirements from what we picked up in the packet about the wall?
There was an amended condition, you're correct. I should have pointed that out Commissioner Benedict, that the staff report reflected 3 conditions. One has been removed because it was pertaining to the walls in the subdivision, which have since been repaired.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna ask a question in regards to clarification. I thought typically we didn't give the C of O until front yard landscaping was complete. And here we allow them to complete it 30 days after. Is that normal? Or am I just mistaken?
Well, the intention is that we can grant the C of O without the front yard landscaping, and 30 days after that, by 30 days, they would have to have the landscaping in.
Right. Okay. Just the way, yeah.
It was probably worded a little,
Sure, that's what I say, it was just for
Right.
clarification, because it seemed a little bit.
yeah.
Any other questions for staff?
Yeah, can I follow up on that?
Please do.
And I guess it's a question to the staff. It seems like you guys don't have enough to do. You've added on another time that you have to, that you have to visit.
The way that, that's
Is that what
addressed.
we really want to do to ourselves?
Okay.
So the reason why, you're right, Commissioner Benedict, that it does make a little bit more burdensome on staff, but here's why the code allows for this and why we impose this condition. Is for single-family homes, first off, we typically don't do C of Os, but we do a final inspection by planning and building. When a builder builds a home, they wait to, the home buyer picks a landscape package, and the landscape package, especially if it's a spec home, sometimes the landscape package is not implemented until they have a buyer who picks it. So there's sometimes a little delay between the time that the landscape design or package is selected and the final inspection by building, especially since some home builders provide for an upgraded landscape package from the standard. There's a standard one and some upgrades, and they wait for the homeowner to pick the upgrade or whatever they might want before they plant. So there's a little bit of a timing issue between building construction and landscape installation. Typically, the planner then just doesn't go out to do the final inspection until after this happens. So the home is technically occupied for 30 days, and then we do our final inspection on the landscaping. So it's kind of a pragmatic solution based on how the industry actually operates.
Thank you.
What's your leverage there, though? I mean, if you got an empty yard and the homeowner's in it, and it's their home now, the builder hasn't provided the landscaping. Can't go back on the homeowner. Is it their fault, or is it?
Most of these new homes have a 1-year warranty. I'm about to get mine tomorrow, and I have 4 plants that have died, and I'm gonna have my builder replace them.
Perfect.
So.
Well played.
So, it works out.
All right. I mean, I trust. I mean, most home builders that are here in town, we haven't had any issues with thus far, so. All right.
With regard to the timing, usually the way it's a time saver is since they're building a lot of homes in mass, we have to go out and do inspections for everything but the landscaping. But during those inspections is an opportunity to look at those homes that were built 30 days earlier to see if the landscaping's in.
Okay, just don't want to burden you guys
Right.
any more than we
Get
have
it all
to.
done in one swoop, right?
Well, yeah.
All right. Any other questions for staff? All right, thank you. At this time, we'd like to invite the applicant and/or their representative to come forward.
All right, good evening, guys. My name's Jake Nickel. I live at 18220 North 68th Street, Unit 107 in Phoenix, AZ, 85254. Like I said, good evening, Mr. Chairman, all the commissioners. Thanks for having me, Richard American. We're excited to continue building within Tamaron, filling out the rest of those lots within Parcel D. Like James noted, it's a straight rollover from what was previously approved. The housing product's going to be the same. Everything that was previously submitted is just rolling right over. But I'm here to answer any questions you guys have.
Awesome. Thank you for being here this evening. Any questions for the applicant? No? All right. No questions for you. Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So this time I will open it up to the public. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak to this agenda item? He felt so moved.
Too many times, right? John McGuire, 1748 North St. Francis Place. Just want to quickly say, since I am a Tamaron resident, these people have been building now for 3 or 4 months pretty steadily and quickly in the other parcels that they already own. Been doing a great job. Everything looks clean. They've been very professional, and the houses seem to be selling as quickly as everywhere else in town. So happy to have them there, and happy to have this one totally closed out here pretty quick, because the way journeys at the north end are just about done as well. So this whole Tamaron thing will be finished off by the time they get done. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? I will close the public portion, bring it back to the commission.
What are me for? Mr. Chairman,
There we go.
I'd like to move to approve the major amendment to the Tamaron PAD's zoning DSA 20-00140.
I second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Linda, will you call the roll?
Member Benedict?
Yes.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes. Next one.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve DSA-20-00139 from the recommendation from the staff be added, if there is any.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval with conditions. Any discussion? Hearing none. Linda, will you call the roll?
Member Benedict?
Yes.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes. Congratulations. Good luck on the next steps in the subdivision. All right. Next, public hearing and consideration of request by Hovnanian Homes, housing product DSA 20-00147, as well as conditional use permit DSA 20-00148. Mr. Gagliardi.
So this request is for another housing product, but in a different neighborhood. Hovnanian, also known as Hov, as you know, they're building in the Villago neighborhood, has now acquired 209 lots within the McCartey Ranch subdivision. So they're in front of you this evening requesting approval of housing product for those 209 lots. And they're also proposing a model home complex, which is subject to the approval of a conditional use permit. The subject lots are located within parcels 5 and 6 of McCartney Ranch. So that's the area surrounded by Brown Avenue to the west and Treckle Road to the east, just north of Rodeo. And they've acquired all of the vacant lots within those 2 parcels. They're also proposing a model home complex located there just south of Wiley Way, east of Brown. Hov is proposing 6 various floor plans. 5 of them are single-story, 1 is 2-story. There's 3 elevations per plan with 9 color schemes. The square footage of the homes range from just over 1,300 square feet to just over 2,200 square feet. The lots within parcels 5 and 6 are both 55 feet wide and 65 feet wide. Their plans range between 35 feet in width and 40 feet in width. However, they all have the option to add a third car garage, which would expand the width of the home. The McCartey Ranch planned area development is subject to the April 1999 version of the residential design standards for planned area developments. As you can see here are some examples of some previous homes built in that neighborhood by previous builders, and they went through a similar review process. The criteria of the 1999 residential design standards basically requires a certain number of floor plans and color schemes, which KHOV is meeting and exceeding. There's also certain rules within terms of there shall not be any more than 2 consecutive similar front home elevations, so that's just something that staff will have to verify when reviewing for plot plans. There's also some requirements for homes backing onto Treacle and Brown. No more than 3 consecutive similar rear home elevations can exist in that scenario. And they're to provide a variety of roofing materials, color, shapes, and textures. This is just an excerpt here of 2 of the 9 color schemes that they've provided, and it's paired with different finishes such as stone and different types of roofing tile. There's also additional requirements, of which the applicant has to meet 4 of 6, and these are the 4 that they're meeting. Essentially, they're offering distinct roof types by offering both the S style of concrete tile as well as the flat style. On the second-story home, they are recessing the second story a little bit back from the first story to create visual interest. And they're offering 3 front yard landscape packages. Another thing I want to point out is that as newer PADs came along and there were more restrictive standards, there was a lot of emphasis in the later versions with regard to minimizing garage dominance. And even though the 1999 design standards doesn't carry as much weight, they are complying with not only the 99 standards, but some of the more restrictive versions, because all but one of the homes has living area either equal to the garage or the living area goes past the plane of the garage, such as in this example. There's 2 recommendations that staff is suggesting that Planning Commission consider. The first one is very similar to what you saw in the last presentation with regard to landscaping. And the second condition, or second recommended condition, has to deal with the plot plan needs to contain certain information on it so that we can ensure that it complies with the residential design standards. The model home complex is the second application that KHOV is requesting approval of this evening. It's for a 3-lot model home complex. As I mentioned, it's just south of Wiley Way on the west side of Kenna Place. The corner lot would be an off-street parking lot that would be temporary for the life of the conditional use permit. And then there's 2 homes that are proposed to be model homes. The home in the middle would have a sales office in lieu of the garage. And the one on the far south would be another one of their models that would just basically be a show home. When reviewing conditional use permits, it's subject to the following review criteria. Typically with model home complexes, we ultimately suggest very similar conditions, such as at the time of the expiration of the permit, the garage is to be restored from a sales office to a fully functioning garage. Any signage, et cetera, has to be removed from the site. All the homes have to be fully functioning as houses. There would be a 5-year time limit on this conditional use permit, and with the hopes that all the homes would sell within those 5 years. So ideally, that wouldn't be a concern. So these are the 10 conditions that would be associated with the conditional use permit resolution. As far as the public notification process, we met what's required by code. We did receive one inquiry, just asking for some information, but they didn't provide any specific comments. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the housing product, subject to the 2 following conditions that I've covered in the staff report and presentation. And staff also recommends approval of the conditional use permit and its associated resolution, subject to the conditions within the staff report and resolution. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Member Dugan.
The only issue I have on this is a flooding issue. I've seen it rain. I guess there's a little washway down in between some of them. You guys had a couple of situations where the city's been out there pumping water because it was threatening homes right across the road there on Rodeo. Those storage units were underwater. They got about 6 or 7 of the units flooded. So I'm concerned if the wash is big enough to handle all this water, and if it's directed in one way. Before that, it didn't have that, so that's my whole issue. Are these homes gonna get flooded if we get a belly wash? Because you've had some serious problems before that you couldn't keep up. You had pumps out there on Rodeo Road, and the water didn't have any place to go. So are you putting bigger retention areas in, or anything like that?
Commissioner Dugan, so the items that you're describing were subdivision improvements that were installed at the time that the lots were created. So typically, we wouldn't necessarily need to go back in and make changes only due to the fact that new homes are being proposed on it. But you are giving us some good indicators that perhaps there are some drainage concerns that will have to be addressed. Paul, do you have any recommendations of what can be done to help ensure that that area doesn't get flooded out?
I'm actually not familiar with any flooding on the north side of Rodeo Road. There may be some flooding on the south side, right?
You had flooding on the north side because you had retention areas that were overflowing, and I was there, I saw it. It's
So,
unbelievable.
James, can you
the
go
flooding.
back?
There is a big flooding issue there.
James, can you
Okay.
go back to that graphic?
I was
please?
going to go to a graphic that
No,
showed.
I want this one right here. Okay, so you can see from the aerial, there is a channel that is bisecting the development. You see that channel? It's not a
Yeah, I see
retention.
the channel there,
So,
but
so that channel is not intended to retain, that's to convey historic flows from the north. So there are significant historic flows conveying through there. Developers are not required to retain historic flows, only new flows they create. So I'm pretty sure the problem you are describing is one with historic flows that have not been conveyed properly to the south, on the south side of Rodeo Road.
It'd probably be
you're gonna guarantee it ain't gonna flood then. That's how I was going to, that's my only problem. I don't want flooding.
Okay.
any other, or Member McBride, you had a question?
Yeah. I had a question about setbacks on it. Now, the side setbacks are only 5 feet on each side? There's not any difference side to side? Because the widths on these houses are, if you allow for a garage on every one of them, the third garage, looks like it's gonna push it wider than some of these lots are.
So you're correct in noticing that these setbacks are a little bit different from many of the planned area development zones,
Yeah.
because traditionally you'll see a 5 foot on one side and 10 foot on another.
Yeah.
The lots are ranging between 55 as a minimum and 65 as a minimum. Most of the homes, all but one really, are 35 feet wide. The option of a third car garage would push it to 45 feet wide. So there's one plan that's indeed 40 feet, which would get pushed to 50. So that home, in theory, would only really be able to be allowed on the 60-foot lot if it had the third car garage option added to it. But that is true, that these setbacks are a little bit narrower, but that was put into place at the time of the zoning approval.
All right, so we're not going to get anything less than 5 foot though, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Member Benedict?
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I got to get on Dugan's live horse. There's a long time ago, there's a lot of water that goes down that wash, and when's the appropriate place to address whether, if that was an issue, you know, how do we, what's the appropriate way to address those, particularly if we're adding more houses and putting more folks' property in the way?
James, can you go back to the aerial, please? So, first off, let me tell you that every new development has to do a drainage analysis. And the drainage analysis has to look fundamentally at two aspects of drainage. The first is how historic flows are conveyed through the property. The state law and standard practice on drainage for historic flows is you have to accept the historic flows that are coming from upstream, and you have to discharge them at essentially the same point where they historically discharge. You're not allowed to push those flows onto anyone else's property and any abutting properties. Also, you're not required to retain those flows, those historic flows that are being generated by properties other than yours. The other thing that every drainage report has to look at is that what additional stormwater flows will be created by the introduction of development, by paved streets, house roofs, sidewalks, driveways, etc., even landscaping. So as you convert the ground from raw ground to developed ground, you increase the stormwater runoff. Every development is required to retain those on their site. There are, in fact, retention basins designed on this property. I'm sure those retention basins are going to be regraded, resurfaced. If there's problems with the dry wells will be cleaned and reinstalled if needed. But this development is not allowed to generate any additional drainage or stormwater runoff. Also, it's not required to solve historical drainage problems that might exist. And so that's what I'm hearing described is, it sounds to me like probably somebody downstream of this has not accepted those historic flows and maybe blocked them, causing some flooding. You know, there is a lot of water coming through this area. I do know that, but this property is not required to solve any kind of system-wide drainage problem that might exist. They do have to retain all their developed flows.
Member Schneider?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tice, Director Tice, it occurs to me that you're correct in that, based on what you've just told us, this really isn't this project's problem, as long as they adhere to the conditions you just read. However, I think what I'm hearing from Commissioner Dugan and Commissioner Benedict is there is a problem, and we would like to respectfully call it to staff's attention and ask that in order to avoid future discussions for future projects that would come before this commission, that somebody take a look at that and see what they can do to mitigate it.
Commissioner Snyder will certainly convey these concerns to the Public Works Director and City Engineer and see what they might be able to do about that. We might also ask the applicant, when they come up to the podium, if they've evaluated the drainage situation for this development and intend to make any enhancements to address any problems that they perceive might be there as well.
Chairman, one more comment. Your exercise, thank you. Those two things would be very helpful for my comfort level.
I got one question too for Paul. Is there any way that you can, there's a nice wash running through that's going to direct the water, that you can make that wash wider? And so it can handle more water when we get it that big belly wash?
Wider?
Deeper.
You Commissioner Dugan, so my sense is it's not a problem that this wash is not large enough to convey the flows through this subdivision. My sense is that the downstream receivers of that water can get inundated by that flow. So I don't think making the wash wider solves anything, but maybe I'm going to give you an example. With Val Vista subdivision, or Gila Buttes, that we looked at a meeting or two ago, we had a similar situation where the historic flows that they were receiving from the north side of Val Vista actually were larger than what were designed to flow through Gila Buttes. That developer widened his channel because he knew his channels were too small to accommodate the historic flows that he was receiving. And they in fact did that so they could receive those historic flows, convey them to the development more appropriately. Maybe that's needs to be done here. I'm sure the applicant, who's a very competent developer, can address that and indicate whether or not his engineers have any concerns. But my sense is it's not necessarily a problem with the channel conveying it, but from the downstream property owners receiving it.
So I think it sounds like, at least from your example, the issue is really what happens when it gets to the south edge of this. Because then when it hits Rodeo Road, right?
Yeah.
And now from there, now that's probably more of a city public works. When we widen that street to its full capacity, how do we keep those flows going to the wash even further south without any issues? And if it's plugging up there, the concern is if this backs up, we don't want it to flood their yards or these houses and things like that. Is that your concern?
And we don't want it to flood the store.
Yeah, we don't want to flood that.
We don't want to flood anybody, right? That's the goal. Any other questions for staff? Okay. So this time I will invite the applicant and or their representative to come forward. And welcome and thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you. Good evening. So my name is Mark Graminsky. I'm with Hovnanian Homes, address 20830 North Tatum Boulevard, number 250. That's Phoenix 85050. So just want to start off say thank you to the Planning Commission for hearing and considering our case for our new upcoming community here. We've had a very successful tenure down here. Starting with Velago, we acquired over 320 lots. We've burned through those in about 2 years, so we're really excited to pick up another couple hundred lots here, kind of fill the pipeline back up for us down here. It's been a very good market down here, considering everything going on in the last year, obviously. So, so regarding the drainage, so I wasn't actually in attendance. So we did meet down there. Our land development folks met with the public works director and some other city employees to kind of go over the site. Obviously, the site's been sitting untouched, it's been weathered for a while and stuff like that. So, we went through there just to identify what we needed to clean up. We need to go through there, spin off all the lots. Like you're saying, we're gonna need to look at those retention basins, regrade them as necessary per the approved civil plans to make sure that the depths, the dry wells, anything in there is working right, any sort of box culverts, everything's clean, all that kind of stuff. So I have not heard of anything regarding this channel. It's a massive channel. I don't believe that's part of our plat or part of that's not anything that we own or could manipulate, as far as I understand. It is a McCartey Ranch tract, but I think that's kind of part of the overall. I don't know, James, if you know the answer to that as far as ownership. I don't believe it's on our plat as what we own. I could be mistaken.
I would agree. I'll go to the outline of the two parcels. It actually omits that wash.
Yeah, so in terms of us needing to, this is very good information. Obviously, this is intel we want to know. If that's something we need to get our civil folks looking at and doing a drainage analysis through there, I'm not sure what was done already. Normally through due diligence when we're looking at deals. There's a lot of stuff like this that we address up front anyway. And again, I haven't heard of anything or any issues of this, but it's certainly something that we should and want to look into as well.
Great. Any questions for the applicant? No?
None.
All right. Well, thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
So at this time, I will open it up to the public portion. Is there anybody here that would like to speak to this agenda item? And he felt so moved again.
Good evening again, John McGuire, 1748 North St. Francis. But I used to live, if you all recall, at 941 East Penny Lane in McCartey Ranch, 2 houses up. I was in the last to the west model home from the old Capital Pacific homes. And there was 2 empty lots before the wash. I lived there for 10 years from the initial inception of the development. We did have maybe once or twice where water did flow through the wash at a significant rate, but I never once saw it come up out of the wash onto our streets. I mean, there's the wash, which is 6 or 7 feet at least deep, and then there's trails that hopefully they're going to clean up as part of this. I guess they're saying they don't own it, but there's actually a trail that goes along the west side of that wash that's a beautiful, nice walking trail. Kind of got neglected during the recession, and unfortunately there's lots of plants and overgrowth on it now, but that, so the entire thing is a good 50 feet wide from side to side. I never saw any water come up there. During the one time we had a major rain, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, that 100-year rain we got one time, there was some issues in the lots up at Diamond and Brown, but my understanding is that really turned out to be more of an issue because there was no development there. The water just ponded in the dirt in the area there and kind of washed some of the dirt out onto the street. But that was a 100-year flood rain that we got that time, and it wasn't super major, but I lived in that, and we had 4 or 5 times where the creek had water in it pretty significantly, but never saw it flood. And I'm just glad to see them get that done. I finally gave up on waiting for it to get done and moved out to a different subdivision, but I'm glad to see it come now, and I didn't have any experience with that in my 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing nobody, I will close the public portion and bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve housing product DSA 00147, McCartey Ranch, parcels 5 and 6, with the listed 2 conditions.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Linda, will you please call the roll?
Member Benedict?
Yes.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make another motion to approve DSA 20-00148 and its associated resolution for the model home complex and conditional use permit for K-Hov Homes, parcels 5 and 6 in McCartey Ranch. with
Second.
the Following conditions.
Now a second.
I'm gonna take a breath every now and then.
Let's have a motion and a second. You still want a second even after you finish?
I'll third it.
Okay, there we go. Motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, Linda, we call the roll?
Member Benedict?
Yes.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Aye.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes. All right, thank you, congratulations. Get there. Yeah, I know, I can't go on. All right. Next, public hearing and consideration requested by Regal Construction and Consulting LLC on behalf of Cox Communications for conditional use permit for a 10-foot tall special purpose fence, DSA 20-00142.
So the requested location for this fence is at the Cox Communications facility site. It's located at the southeast corner of Cottonwood Lane and Colorado Street. So the request pertains to the fact that there was a directive of the Department of Homeland Security to secure any site that is considered as critical infrastructure. And since this is a communications facility, it's determined to be a location where there needs to be some bolstered security measures as part of the Department of Homeland Security directive. So in order to accommodate that, they're requesting to place a 10-foot tall tubular steel fence around its existing facility. And this is being done at various facilities nationwide. The city code allows fencing. However, when fencing is associated with a non-residential use, such as this location, and it's next to a residential use, the maximum allowed height is 6 feet, unless the fence is granted approval as a special purpose fence. Here's an example of the type of fencing that Cox Communications has provided around some other locations. This one is in the Phoenix area. In the city code section 1752-180, it states that fences for special purposes and fences differing in construction height or length may be permitted in any district by issuance of a conditional use permit approved by the Planning Commission. When reviewing conditional use permits, it's subject by code to these 5 criteria, and within the staff report, there is analysis of the 5 criteria, and I will go over each of them in this presentation. The first criteria is that the site for the proposed use is adequate in size and topography to accommodate the use, and all yards, spaces, walls, and fences, etc., are adequate to properly relate to the use within the land and uses in the vicinity. So the fence is similar to fencing provided around schools and locations such as swimming pools for security measures, or view fencing bordering developments to provide use separation without providing a visual blockage, such as a CMU wall. It is see-through so as not to bring unnecessary massing or a visual barrier closer to adjacent properties. There's different types of fencing that I wanted to show you that exists around the area. So the fence being proposed is most similar to the fencing that you see at Vista Grande High School. However, just to the south, there is fencing at Ironwood Elementary. It is a little different. And then there's similar type fencing around the city vehicle parking area just west of City Hall. And then these are similar view fencing provided around apartment complexes and swimming pools. The second criteria that gets evaluated is that the proposed use relates to streets and highways, adequate in width and pavement type to carry the quantity and kind of traffic generated by the proposed use. So as a fence and as the existing facility, neither of them generate traffic, nor does the fence create a visual barrier impeding with site visibility, particularly because it will be set back from the property lines. One condition that has been modified since the publication of the staff report, and it is updated in the resolution, is that we are recommending that the minimum setback for the fence be 15 feet from any property line. So that will ensure that there'll be landscaping in between the fence and the public streets. The entrance at Colorado Loop will be gated, and the gate installation will be verified to meet fire code approval at the time of building permitting. The other criteria pertains to conformance with the city's general plan. This area is within the neighborhood land use designation, which primarily accommodates low-density residential and neighborhood-scale businesses. This use is neither. It's more of an essential public facility of sorts that houses a server. But when looking at the general plan, There is a goal in policy that pertains to fencing. One is that you are to encourage compatible land uses within the planning area. And one of the ways to help with compatibility is using fencing as a method to minimize land use conflict. This criteria, the proposed use will have no adverse effect upon abutting property, is probably the most important, and it carries the most weight. Because as a result of the public notification about this fence, staff did receive a number of concerns from surrounding residents. And I believe they're here to ask questions and talk about their concerns this evening. But essentially, to sum up some of the concerns, and they've been distributed to you this evening, is that the fence is industrial in appearance, and the current building is already out of place with the nearby homes, so that will just add to the industrial look of the site. There was concern that the gate operation may be noisy. The fence will give the impression that the neighborhood is unsafe because now it's being fenced. Does that connote that there's some inherent crime issue in the area? And also the concern that the presence of the fence could screen additional unapproved activities such as storage. Staff's response to this is that since fencing is a part of the Department of Homeland Security's directive to protect communication facilities, this really isn't a reactive response to any sort of crime in the area, but rather a proactive response as it's been determined to be critical infrastructure. And the fencing is not of chain link. It's not of a visually massive material such as block, like a 10-foot block fence would be. So it does help provide some mitigation in terms of the fact that it's see-through. It doesn't completely screen the view of the lot, so it hinders the ability for additional storage or whatnot to occur on the other side of the fence. And also it is to be set back from the property lines, allowing for the landscaping to remain unblocked between the fence location and the public streets. However, I will note that the site plan that was provided did not note the setback from the fence to the property lines. So that's why the condition has been updated to provide a minimum distance of 15 feet from all property lines. The fence is to be located outside of the drainage swale. The fence shall not include any additional screening elements, so as to, what that would do is it would prevent there to be outdoor storage that you could screen because it would be a screened fence. And any painting of the fence shall have planning department approval to ensure compatibility with the approved color schemes of the existing residences within the Cottonwood Commons PAD. And the height is limited to 10 feet. And those specific conditions translate over to the last conditional use permit review criteria, which is that as a conditional use, we can impose special conditions that are determined necessary in order to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare. And so because of that, what the recommended conditions are is what I've already sort of gone over, but specifically that the minimum distance of the fence shall be 15 feet. There shall not be any additional screening elements such as fabric or mesh that would render it opaque. The fence shall not be any taller than 10 feet. The fence shall be subject to the approved placement per a site plan provided with an approved building permit. The gating of the drive access shall meet with all local fire codes as approved by the fire department. The painting of the fence would have to be ensured compatibility with the approved colors of the surrounding neighborhood. The fence and gate shall be maintained in good condition by the owner or their designee. And also shall a different use be proposed for the site. The fence and gating shall be removed unless it goes back in front of commission for a new conditional use permit. There was a public notification process that was entered into There was a sign posted on Friday, September 25th, and prior to that, there was notice sent out to owners of property within 300 feet. Unfortunately, I didn't receive any public comments until after the staff report was published, but those comments have since been distributed to you to address the concerns that were received. And I did give a brief overview on a previous slide, but basically this outlines the specific concerns that I received specifically from 3 different people. One was the Cottonwood Commons management, just indicating that it was industrial in appearance and it would leave a detrimental impression of the neighborhood. There was concern that it would affect home values. A homeowner across from the facility contends that the 10-foot height does not belong in a family neighborhood, especially with its industrial appearance. They also felt that at the time that the Cox facility was built, that they were told that there wouldn't be any fencing and that the site would blend in as much as possible, and the fence really doesn't help accomplish that. Also, there was concern about the children's use of the sidewalks next to the proposed fencing. And there was another homeowner who had just basically wanted some clarification as to what was the driving security issue. And hopefully the applicant is in attendance to help elaborate on that. And also concerned over the height, why 6 feet wouldn't be appropriate. And they were also concerned that they didn't want to see additional equipment stored outside of the facility. Staff does recommend that with those special conditions in mind associated with the conditional use permit resolution, that Planning Commission approve the CUP, and there's also 3 associated technical modifications. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for staff?
I do. Is this a requirement by Department of Homeland Security, or is this a recommendation?
Commissioner Tucker, that's a great question. I've heard verbiage such as it's a directive. It's Cox Communications is responding to Homeland Security's request by this means. These means, I'm not sure if there are other ways or other requirements that they also have to meet, but hopefully the applicant can respond to that.
Okay. And my next question probably for the applicant too is there any public safety equipment, 911 or anything like that associated with this central office?
I understand that leading up to this fence placement, they have done some bolstered security measures such as cameras, et cetera, but I don't know to what extent.
Well, my question would be does this facility have anything to do with public safety communications or anything else, or is Cox providing any 911 or emergency services through this facility?
Sorry, I had misunderstood your question. I believe that it does coordinate public safety related issues, but the applicant can elaborate.
Any other questions? Member Dugan.
Yeah, my question to you is, the houses were built, I used to live in the area, those houses were built before this building was built. I want to know if any of the local residents are complaining came to this meeting when this building was approved, protested this thing at that time, or nobody came to the meeting to protest the building, or did that happen?
Well, Commissioner Dugan, that's a good question, and there are residents here that can maybe relate to that. The site plan for this building was submitted in late 2012, and I think that to a lot of residents' surprise, that this was a commercially designated lot. I think the impression was that was just an empty residential lot. It's the one non-residential lot within the Cottonwood Commons PAD that was approved prior to any development in the area. It was designated to be for commercial, but I think the impression was it was probably supposed to be intended for more of like an office building. So when Cox Communications proposed development there, my guess is that there was a lot of discussion and probably concerned about the appearance of the building and the site. And hopefully the residents can expound on that.
You wouldn't have those, when that building was approved, you wouldn't have that in the minutes?
We certainly do have access to the meeting minutes from 2013,
Well,
sure.
yeah. I'd like you to research that down the road.
Yep.
Any other questions for staff? Maybe later. Okay. Then at this time, I would like to invite the applicant and/or their representative to come forward.
Wow. They don't even have an applicant. Oh.
We have no applicant.
Go with no.
Okay, I'm gonna go with no. All right.
There are pressing questions we need to ask.
I know,
further with
I'm
this.
kind of like, Member Benedict,
Yeah,
yes.
so with that in mind, can I ask staff, did you see any documentation of the HSA requirement or recommendation or whatever it was?
Yes. Yeah, per their narrative, they cited basically a presidential order that dates back to like 2015. And when I went on to the Department of Homeland Security site, I did confirm that communications is one of the sectors that's been determined as critical. And it is clear that there are a number of Cox facilities throughout the country that have added this fencing. You know, the closest one is the example that they provided here, and that's in North Phoenix of a similar Cox facility where they've added a similar type fencing.
And were you able to note that what the requirement for the height when you were in that research?
Because that doesn't look like a 10-foot fence there in that photo.
That's a 6-foot, I think, there.
I have no idea, but it just.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it
Because that
doesn't
was
look
one of-
like it.
Because that was one of the comments.
Well, if you look in reference to the building behind it, it's
What's that?
Uh-huh.
It's probably 8 foot
8 foot,
at
maybe
most.
8.
Yeah, it's probably 8.
Um,
Maybe it's tall transport, right? I don't know.
Member Schneider, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gagliardi, I think in keeping with some of the questions from other commissioners, did you see anything that said this is in response to a directive
Yes.
from Homeland Security? So you saw writing on paper that said, Homeland Security says we gotta do this, and this is our response. Is there any
Yes, it
sense
was-
that fencing is not the only solution? In
What I
other words, I understand Homeland Security says, secure your facility.
Right.
Because they're doing it everywhere for water utilities and so on and so forth. I get that. But my question is the fencing solution Cox's solution, or is it a specific recommendation, mandate, if you will, from Homeland Security?
I do not know.
I'd like to know.
I would just want to say that I think it's important that we do this when we have a representative from the company, because communications is a very broad spectrum nowadays. You could have satellites could be considered communications, cell sites could be considered communications, and it's however we're interpreting it and how they're interpreting it, and I think that needs some clarification. Is it, if it's a requirement, and, you know, whether there is actual public safety issues in there, you know, I mean, whether 911 or something like that, because communications is a very, very broad area at this point in time, that you could have implications on multiple different sites across the community that don't have fencing like this now. And it kind of sounds like it's an interpretation unless we have some clarification from the company itself. I would motion to table this until they can provide a representative.
Did you make,
Did
did you say I moved to the table?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Do I have a motion and a second?
I'll third.
Hang on real quick, I got discussion,
We gotta let them talk, though.
I'm gonna need my attorney online here. He's on call, right?
I'm here.
All right, so I got a motion and a second on the floor in discussion. Am I, to table, but we got some
Right.
reaction that we would like some public comment still this evening.
Right, well, I mean, there's no requirement for you to have the public comment tonight if someone has moved to table it. So it's really, I mean, right now you have a motion on the floor, so you have to deal with the motion, one way or the other. If they want to withdraw it so you can have public comment tonight, that's fine. You know, but you have a motion on the floor. So it's up to the movers, what they want to do.
But if you withdraw it now, they're going to have to come back and do the same thing the next time. They're going to have to make the comments to us tonight, and they're going to have to come back and make them the next time to get it on, aren't they?
I'll be happy to remove it.
It'll be part of the record.
You have a question on the motion, yes? Yeah.
So we've taken our time to come here tonight to represent our community. And in fairness, we like to speak to some of the questions that you've had about how this building was put together and how it was pushed into our neighborhood. And at least you would have an idea of how we got stuck with this building, so that when you guys are sitting down and we come back next time, there's groundwork in front of us. Without that, we're only listening to one side of the story. So that's my question on the motion.
So, real quick, before we get too many people jumping in, I gotta bring it back to the people that made the motion.
I'll table the motion for public comment.
So currently, we have a withdrawn motion.
Withdraw the motion for.
Yeah, I'll second it.
So it's been withdrawn and
So I gotta vote on that, Mark?
It was never voted on to begin
No,
with.
if they withdraw the motion, no vote.
Okay, I just wanna make sure. All right, so we've got a withdrawn motion. Thank you guys, obviously. So at this time then, I will open the public portion of this agenda item. And so, please feel free, please state your name and address for the record.
Aaron Morris, I live at 1379 East Colorado Loop. I'm the president of the HOA. I want to thank you, gentlemen, ladies, for hearing us this evening. So I really didn't know how to present this, but so many great questions came up.
Could you move the microphone in front, so, thank you.
When the Cox project came to our neighborhood, I would say that 75% of the homeowners were against it. There were unethical practices, including paying homeowners to sign petitions to have the building built. At that time, I was not the president of the HOA, but the building got built, and there were certain promises. Those promises were that it would stay like it is, there would not be a second story built, and that the retention area would never be built on, and that there would never be a fence. So when we received this notice, we immediately got another petition with, I would say, 95% of the homeowners against the fence. So I understand what it means when Homeland Security recommends something. But there's also a risk in the vulnerability assessment that should have been done for the parcel. And I would hope that Cox, their security officers, would have made a proper assessment. And if that assessment has been made, it should be public record. So the 10-foot fence, in all the slides that you showed, the fence that's there now is at the most 8 foot. 10 foot is excessive. I don't think there's a 10-foot fence in all of Casa Grande. I don't even think the communication center, your most prized place, in case anything of terrorist action would happen here, is not even protected with a 10-foot fence. There are other things that you can do, like bolsters. I've been privileged to work in different areas, after 9/11, and I saw how they, Grand Central Station, they didn't put a 10-foot fence. Madison Square Garden, they didn't put a 10-foot fence. Port Authority building in New York City, no 10-foot fence. So I'm asking that we not allow the 10-foot fence and find out what the risk assessment is. And if there is a problem where that building is now bringing a danger to the community should know that that building is a target for either domestic or foreign terrorists or some sort of problem. But we don't have any of that information. And that building also has an ESS system, which is an electronic security system. In the years that that building's been built, there's never been graffiti, there's never been a break-in, nothing. The only thing that's ever happened to that building is that I've stopped people from putting stuff in their dumpster when it was first built. It's unfair to the homeowners who live across the street to have anything unsightly like that in front of their home. I live to the east of it. So I'm asking again, I understand what your conditional use permit means. It means it's up to your discretion for approval. And you have the authority, because you're the authority with the jurisdiction, the authority having jurisdiction. I would hope that one of the main conditions concerned would be the adverse effect that this would have on the home values throughout Cottonwood Commons Homeowners Association. We are just 27 homes. We're not those other plots that you showed today. That building is bad enough. If you turn it into something that I see when I go through Eloy, like one of the prisons, it's gonna destroy our home values. It really is. And we've fought very hard to keep our home values where they are. And with the help of everything else that you're doing in this city, our home values are pretty steady. So I would ask that we see a risk assessment for why we need a 10-foot fence. And I would like to know the regulations and the requirements that Homeland Security put down. What were the specifications? The person who's asking for this permit, they're not Homeland Security. So there had to be specs and specifications, and there had to be some guidelines. And also, when you're doing the risk assessment, there's a minimum and a maximum. So 10-foot fence is close to a maximum in a community like this. So there has to be a minimum. And the difference between a 10-foot fence and a 7-foot fence is determination of the person who wants to get inside the fence. So I'm asking that you consider us as your neighbors and help us get an answer to this problem and not approve this fence. Thank you.
Thank you. And then one thing that I'll ask you to do is, obviously, you have contact information for Mr. Gagliardi.
Yes, I can give.
And so if you want to connect with him, just in regards to, you're the HOA president?
Yes, I am.
And so, between now and it looks like would be the next meeting, that it seems like this may be tabled till, to just be in conversation with him, if the homeowners are, are you okay with a 6-foot fence, or are you okay with a, something else, and so that way we know and staff can work with the applicant as well, and hopefully that they're willing to work with you guys. But I just ask that you make sure you have his contact information to stay in touch.
We have been in touch. I would just ask for the guidelines of why, of what size fence that we have to have. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And would anybody else from the public like to speak? By all means, come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Sarah Martinez. I live at 1390 East Colorado Loop, right across the street from the facility. In the letter that Cox sent on April 18th, 2019, they referenced the Presidential Policy Directive 21. Any information that is available publicly on the DHS or the CISA website only speaks very broadly and vaguely regarding just making it a more secure facility. It lists fencing, cameras, enforcing doors, windows, locks, things like that. It doesn't give any specifics that I could find publicly. I would like to know if there's a way that we can get the specifics for the PPD 21 so that we know if the 10-foot fence is mandated by the Department of Homeland Security, or if it's just what Cox is doing at their facilities. That's all I have. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you for being here this evening. Anybody else from the public?
My name's Paige Bryan. I live directly across the street as well, 1392 East Colorado Loop. Barry pretty much covered everything about most of our concerns. I just want to add a few things. We purchased our home in 2011, and I do not know the exact date they built. I can't remember, but I do know I went to the meetings. I spoke with them several times. They held it across the street at the preparatory high school. They had us all meet there, showed us pictures, they really wanted that spot for some reason, and it was a residential lot. So when we purchased, and there's a lot of us here that lived there when this was a residential lot when we bought,
So, just to clarify, it was a commercial lot ever
No,
since
it
the
was a
beginning?
residential lot, and it got changed for Cox to build there, I'm pretty sure. And as far as I know, it was residential, and something was changed so that they could build there, and that's why they came around the neighborhood and were basically trying to sell us on the idea of having them there. But that was my understanding. And they did make promises to us, and one of their main promises was that there was not going to be a fence. And so now I'm very angry that 7 years later, they've applied for it, they haven't come to talk to us. I guess she got a letter, I didn't get a letter. So I didn't find out for like a week, about a week ago from you sending the notice. So that kind of upsets me. But they made a lot of promises to us that it was going to be beautiful, it was going to fit in, it was going to match. And then we got it, and well, because I don't know how they got it. Anyways, they got it changed, and it's 2 stories, and it has no windows. So it is, I do not see how anybody could break into it. It's brick, no windows, and they have security cameras. I've seen nobody on the property trying to vandalize or break in. So if it's a target, if it's terrorism or something, is a fence really going to stop that? Probably not. And I don't see any small break-ins going on over there from what I see, from my perspective. I think that was the only thing I heard you asking if anybody was there in 2011, and I was, and I think that was it. Let me make sure.
Do you recall if you came to the meeting here that we had, or was it
I
just
don't
the
think
meeting
I
here?
came to this meeting, no. I do not remember if I even knew about that. I don't know that I really probably even understood the process of it. I just remember them inviting us over to a presentation at the preparatory high school. Okay. So after that, no, I didn't come here, so
Okay.
I wouldn't have been at that meeting.
Well, thank you for being here this evening.
And just please think about, would you want a 10-foot fence like that directly across the street from you? That's not fair to us, so please consider that when you make your decision. So, thank you.
It's on the first page. Yeah, I know. I was thinking I was here at that time.
I know. David was here.
Yeah, David was here. Tucker would have been here. Yeah.
We were all here.
I think I had just gotten on.
Good evening one more time. John McGuire, 1748 North St. Francis Place. This obviously does not directly affect me, and I will go back and research. I was at that meeting. I do not remember the details of the discussion. I'm not quite that good. But I would just like to say I don't appreciate the fact, rather, that Cox is not here. Now, they may not have known that there was any opposition, since it seems to have come later in the process. So they may not have known. I don't know if the city notified them that there was opposition. It's not a requirement or anything, but it is sort of disappointing that they're not here to address any of these concerns that the commission and the public have. The public's been extremely respectful in the process here and has every right to bring up these concerns. So that's one side. But on the other side of the coin, I think that the chairman made a good recommendation for the HOA president to work on behalf of the residents, just in case this is something that there is little choice for the commission to approve or not approve, that there be some additional mitigation of any sort that can be had. If the fence has to be 10 feet for whatever reason, let's suggest to Cox that there be massive amounts of landscaping. You know, let's really make this as best as we can make it if there's no choice. If there's choices in the matter, then of course defer to the commission to make the choice that's best for what you feel is best if there is different options. But if there's not, I think the city can impose some conditions, additional conditions on the CUP that would at least make this as best as it can possibly be. And rather than have to go through that again after another meeting, maybe we can take this 30 days where the chairman made that suggestion, that be an option available ahead of time is my only suggestion. Otherwise, I think that it's really a kind of a bummer. They're all here tonight, ready to do their part, and Cox is not here to represent themselves. So thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Nathan Martinez. I live at 1390 East Colorado Loop. I just have one thing to say. They said 12 years ago, 10 years ago, that there wouldn't be a fence, and now they're saying that there is going to be a fence with no mesh. Well, it says right here, the fence shall not be taller, or the fence shall not include any additional screening elements such as fabric or mesh, rendering it opaque, unless a new conditional use permit is considered and approved. So right now, they're saying it's just going to be see-through, but down the road, it could be blocked, rendering our...
They would have to go through this process again.
Yeah, but they said they weren't going to put a fence. Now we're here arguing for a fence. Who to say 6 months down the road, they're saying it's going to be meshed. Thank you.
My name is Julie Myers. I live at 1394 East Colorado Loop. I live right across the street from this thing, so their driveway is right across from my driveway. That's where the gate's going to be. But I can't hear everything that's being said tonight, so I just wanted to make sure that you understood the history of what was happening here all these years ago before we had Cox Building move in. That lot was previously for, I believe, 3 houses was supposed to go there. The owner of that property got an offer from Cox, changed it into commercial rather than residential. These people went around to each door and knocked on our doors and told us they would give us each $100 if we would go ahead and allow it. Most people on the other side of the loop, you can see that's not really affected, don't have to look at it every day, readily took the money and did that. I held out, and I was personally told that they would sue me if I would not go ahead and say, okay, and take the $100. The other thing that I was wanting to make sure is there any way that what information that you had gleaned from Homeland Security can be printed up and given to our president? So that we can also look at that? And
Mostly I just looked online, so I'd be happy to send links, but I think the true thing that needs to be done is have the applicant speak to that, and unfortunately they're not here.
Yeah, anything that you can send to us so that we can also kind of dissect what's being thought and taken from that, that would be awesome. And that's it. Thank you.
Great, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Bryan, I live at 1392 East Colorado Loop. Just shy of a decade living in that neighborhood. I was there before that building was placed there. You know, all good points from Barry, Sarah, Paige. We've been neighbors for a long time. I wasn't at some of those meetings, but you know, I'm aware of some of the situations that Cox presented and things of that nature. I just want to present to you that, you know, imagine yourself living in a house. Somebody wants to put a 10-foot fence directly in front of your house. 10 foot, I'd have to say it's probably about that exit sign. Maybe a little bit taller. I don't know. I don't have a tape measure, but imagine looking at that outside your front door. I mean, I plan on living there for another decade, 2 decades, so. I mean, it's unfortunate that I might have to live with that. So please find it in your hearts to imagine yourself living in that situation. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. there's nobody else, I will close the public portion. Want to thank you guys for obviously coming out and voicing your opinion and being part of this process. We don't get enough of that sometimes during these meetings, so thank you for being here. Mr. Benedict.
Mr. Chairman, so the commission's aware, I had a conversation with James about my concerns, and I think relates to what what these folks have been talking about. I've been disappointed that, and a little bit surprised, but the north landscaping, to me, does a fairly effective job at blocking and ameliorating the impact of the view of that and the side of that. The other two sides, so it'd be the west side and the south side, the pine trees, I believe, is what was put in there, to me, have been very disappointing. And one of the amendments I was ready to offer was that they put in a Palo Verde style of some kind to work with the staff to get the rest of those views in a similar, if not better manner. And I had hoped that would help with these. I hope that the staff will work with them in this next month to talk about it, assuming that my colleagues will put forth their motion.
Member Snyder.
I'd simply like to make the observation, it seems to me that what I'm hearing is this is a combination issue. First of all is the fence, and that's what so many find objectionable and on the face of it unreasonable, since there's no empirical data that says this is an absolute directive from the United States government, Department of Homeland Security, and this is the only acceptable solution. But secondly, to Mr. Benedict's point, is the screening, and that's not I'm hearing that that's not a perfect solution because of fears, certainly on the south side and on the east side, because of views from housing. They don't want to see the fence. They don't want the fence, but if the fence is there, they don't want to see things going inside the fence that suddenly they can't tell that something's going on. And so it's going to be a challenge, Mr. Gagliardi.
For us, we're the ones
And
that
for
make the
us.
decision.
And for us, exactly.
Anybody else?
Yeah, can the staff get a hold of the meeting that this was approved at and send us a copy of it, email to us, so we know at the next meeting what happened at that meeting and how they got this approved?
Sure.
Is that possible? I'd love to have that.
And the only other thing, I guess, is clarification on the zoning changes and dates.
So from the history that I gleaned, this area was annexed into the city in 1974. And then in 1987, that was the most recent zoning map update citywide. It was designated R1, which was single-family residential. Then in 2002, City Council approved the Cottonwood Commons PAD, designating single-family residential for all but that parcel. It was designated as commercial/professional offices. I didn't reflect it in the staff report, but there was a major site plan that had come forward in the early 2000s to develop that lot as an office building, and it received planning commission approval, but they never pulled any permits, and that approval then expired. There was no amendment in the records to the zoning to change the use. It just skipped forward to 2013, where planning commission approved the major site plan for the Cox Communication Facilities.
Okay.
But there probably were neighborhood meetings associated with that. And I'm certain that, within the minutes, we'd find that there were a lot of concerns expressed about the appearance of the building.
Yeah. Okay.
And I believe the property just to the east of the Cottonwood housing area is all commercial. That huge
Correct.
lot is all commercial, which is also right next to the Arizona Water Company has an abandoned well sitting right up against it.
Yes, they do.
In somebody's backyard, in your guys' subdivision.
Mr. President,
Member Dugan.
I'd like to make a motion that we lay this on the table to the next meeting with a condition that the staff meets with Cox and president of the subdivision and see if they can work out some agreement. At least you can come back to us the next meeting to make some recommendations and see if they can work something out before we have to vote on this.
November 5.
Yeah, so.
Let's have a motion to table.
And motion to table, yeah.
Second.
And second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Agenda item's been tabled till next month. Thank you guys very much for coming out. Obviously, speaking your voice, we appreciate it. Yep.
Mark it on your calendar, the first Thursday of the month.
Yeah, first Thursday of the month, right here.
No popcorn.
What? I should have brought my popcorn. All right.
You don't have to stay for this. This is gonna be an hour.
Director Tice, isn't there something that was with that for utilities and everything else?
Thank you.
Because I remember we rezoned it. Maybe we've been here too long, but two of us were here at that meeting.
I was here also.
Yeah,
and I may have even been here.
Because it's a necessary utility, was part of the reasoning why it was able to go there, because they can't just send it to a different location because the fiber ran down Cottonwood Avenue.
We have to be careful because we're not talking
It's
about
over.
the agenda item. But we'll give you a full briefing on the zoning in our staff report last time, okay? The short version is no rezoning. You did approve a major site plan. Determination was that it was equivalent to an office use. That's how it got there. Okay, so this next item on the agenda is a briefing of the commission on the new 2030 general plan. We are currently in what's known as the 60-day public review period for the general plan. That's required by state law. That review period started on September 1st and will run through November 1st. I believe all the commissioners were provided on September 1st with some notification with a link that would allow you to access the general plan online. And then this evening, we have provided you with a printed copy of the 60-day draft. Does everyone have one of those? Linda, does everyone get a 60-day?
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder says he did not get one.
Dugan's stealing them again.
Okay, good. Now everyone has a printed copy as well. My intent this evening, I know you've had about 30 days to look at it, at least online, and we have another 30 days to consider evaluation of it. But my intent this evening was just to kind of give you a nice executive summary, overview of some of the major changes in the 2030 plan from the 2020 plan, and there are a few, and give the commission an opportunity to ask any questions you might have regarding the plan or to make any comments that you might want staff to consider as we move forward. I'd like to just say that the development of the general plan has been a collaborative process, that started with City Council's adoption of a public participation plan back in May of 2019, where Council kind of outlaid the process, the stakeholder process, the public participation process that they wanted followed as we developed the plan. We kicked the plan off with a large community meeting on January 25th, and as you can see from the photos, it was pre-COVID, at least pre-COVID as we know it today. And so we were lucky, actually, to be able to have that nice in-person interaction, and we had great attendance at that meeting and received a lot of good direction from the public that participated in that. We have briefed the Planning Commission one time earlier, back in February. You may or may not recall that, but that was kind of early in the process. We also briefed City Council in March. We've, since the early stages of the plan development, we did have a general plan website that was developed by our consultant, Planette, and Leslie Dornfeld is here with us this evening. And so she and her sub-consultants put together a website that we've been using to help engage the public throughout the process on the general plan. We also created a technical advisory committee and held 11 meetings with them, a steering forum, 12 meetings with them. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those groups in just a second. And of course, where we are today is we've distributed the draft plan for a 60-day review, not a 30. I will say that this is a draft. There are typos in here. There are some format issues and probably some grammatical changes that need to be edited. And so we are working on editing it. So I'm really, as you give us feedback on the plan, we understand the editorial issues, and we will address those prior to the final plan being published. A little bit more about the Technical Advisory Committee that helped provide a lot of technical information to the plan and assisted both staff and the planning consultants as we developed this. We had a group of folks that represented every major city department. You can see them listed here, and they engaged with us on the development of the plan. I can say that, for example, the Public Works Department, the city traffic engineer and his consultant basically wrote the transportation element for us. So they gave a lot of effort and a lot of work on the transportation element. Both the fire and police department worked closely with staff in developing the public facilities element as well. And of course, planning staff contributed very heavily to the writing of almost all of the elements of the plan. The Technical Advisory Committee, in addition to city staff, had representatives of various other agencies that are engaged in the development process, the planning process, and are very significant stakeholders in the whole process. You can see their list there. I will note that Commissioner Snyder was representing the Pinal County AMA Groundwater User Advisory Council, so he did sit on the technical committee. And both Commissioner Snyder and Terry Sue Rossi from Arizona Water Company were instrumental in helping write the water resource element and providing information regarding water resource in Casa Grande. We also had a steering forum group that was more of a broad-based community group as kind of a policy directive kind of group, if you will. It was chaired by the mayor, and both the steering forum was actually appointed by city council. The technical committee was appointed by the city manager, but the mayor chaired this group, and we had, you can see it's very broad-based, and Commissioner Tucker represented the Planning Commission on that group. So getting into the specifics on the general plan, the foundation or cornerstone of the general plan is really the land use element, as we call it. That's what we use at every one of these meetings when the commission looks at various land use decisions and applications. We have to find it's in compliance with the general plan. And the land use element is one of the ones that we look at very, very closely and rely on. It has a map with the various land use categories, and it has also subsections on accommodating growth and a discussion in this general plan on the future annexations that we might consider over the next 10 years that would be beneficial to the community. This is our land use map. I'm not going to go in much detail on that. I'm going to touch base on a couple of points, a couple categories, but not really go into any property by property basis. But I can tell you that in developing this land use map, there was a lot of discussion at the steering forum and the technical committee where we really got down to the actual property boundary level to make sure that the land use boundaries were working well with the property boundaries, and it was very logical how the map was configured. We'll talk a little bit more about some of those decisions. The other elements in the general plan are reflected on the screen. Almost all of those are required by state law with their mandatory elements, with the exception of economic development and historic preservation. Those are not required by state law. Those are what we'll call optional developments that were included because of they really are important to Casa Grande and to the community. So they were included. Historic preservation and economic development were included in the prior 2020 plan as well. We organized the plan by this framework which groups the elements under a kind of a more broader topic, such as the growing economy, quality of life, environmental sustainability. And so they're just kind of grouped that way. They relate well together. It's just a way of maybe thinking about the plan if you want to focus on one kind of component of the community versus another, you might focus on reading and delving into those elements a little deeper. The development of this plan was a very collaborative process. I mentioned that, from the community meeting to the technical committee to the steering forum. And it's through that process we developed, what we heard from feedback resulted in us developing these guiding or founding principles. And so really every major change in the 2030 plan from the 2020 plan is to further implement these guiding principles. And the first one was linking land use decisions of known available water resources to ensure long-term viability, environmental sustainability for all new growth and development. So linking water resources to land use decision-making. That was one of the things we really wanted to accomplish with this plan, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more when we get to the water resource element, but that was a very important element of the plan. The next one which was really very important, was to focus on facilitating downtown development, enhancing the downtown, and specifically trying to encourage more residential development in the downtown area to enhance that viability. Thirdly was to increase the range of housing choices in the community. 4, to honor and preserve the rural and agricultural heritage of Casa Grande while allowing urbanization to occur in appropriate locations. If I had to say the focus of the prior 2020 land use plan, it was number 4. The priority of this land use plan recognizes, this general plan recognizes to preserve rural and agricultural heritage is very important, but we need to balance it with these other aspects of community development. We also acknowledged that industrial development and commercial development of Casa Grande was very important and was actually the driver of growth and development in the community. The way I like to think about it is, Casa Grande grows because we create jobs, and the jobs drive additional development versus being a bedroom community. So I think that's very important to Casa Grande as well. Infill was another one of our founding principles that we looked at. We have, if you think about when you drive through the community, all of the kind of vacant lots and parcels that you have that are adjacent or close to other developed areas, and we have a lot of vacant land that's kind of in what we'll call the core of the urbanized area that should be developed before we spread out to the more outskirts of the community, because that's in the best interest of the community in terms of being able to efficiently and effectively provide municipal services. And we analyze that, and you're going to see that a little bit, that we think we have a lot of infill that can meet our land use demands. Create a sense of arrival at major entryways was another one of the guiding principles. Manage growth to ensure that infrastructure is available concurrent with development. Allow growth that we can provide efficient and fiscally responsible services to, and foster a land use pattern that can be served by a variety of transportation modes, such as walking, bicycling vehicles, mass transit, and autonomous vehicles. So these founding principles all kind of drove the changes that were made from the 2020 plan to the 2030 plan. If you just look purely at the land use mix between the two plans, there's really not much change. You can see these two pie charts look very similar in terms of the amount of land that is placed in each of the land use categories. The only difference really from looking at this is in the 2030 plan, we've introduced a new downtown land use. It only represents about 1% of our land area, so it's not significant in that way, but it is significant to fostering downtown development. You can see the neighborhoods shrunk a little bit, rural grew a little bit, but everything else kind of stayed the same. But there were major changes between the 2020 and the 2030 plans. When we went into this process of developing the new general plan, I think I said several times that the bones of the 2020 plan were solid. It was a good plan. We just wanted to fine tune it and revise it a little bit to address some sort of emerging community concerns and needs, including evaluating, again, whether or not we had water resource availability to support our growth projections, to create the new downtown land use category to facilitate downtown development, to provide additional opportunity for middle density housing in the neighborhood land use area to improve housing choices. We combined the rural and ag into one land use category because frankly, there's not much distinction between them. We didn't see there was any reason to separate them. We needed to expand the amount of land in the manufacturing and industrial land use category, and we'll show that, and consolidate our growth areas from 4 into 2 to simplify that. So I just want to talk about the portions of the general plan that relate to those major changes. That's what I'm just going to talk about for the rest of this presentation. So the first is linking land use to water resources. So our guiding principle is to link all land use decisions to known available water resources to ensure long-term viability and sustainability of all new growth and development. The state law, the state statute for general plans actually requires us to have a water resource element and to look at those 3 bullets that I have on the screen, to look at what what's your available water supply, look at what your demand for water is for your new projected growth, and see, do you have enough water to support that demand, and if not, what's the plan for providing a water resource to support your growth? Pretty simplistic, takes a lot of analysis to answer those questions, as I learned. So the first thing we looked at was, or one of the first things we looked at was, well, what's been our population increase since 2020 to 2030, and how much water have we been using over that last decade? This is a pretty interesting piece of data. I was pretty shocked at it. Our population increase has been about 12%, 2019, but our water consumption has been basically the same, about 15,000 acre feet per year. This comes from Arizona Water. They're the primary water provider to urbanized development in Casa Grande. And so the only reason that I believe that we could have achieved this was through different types of conservation methods that we've been implementing over the last decade. So that's really good. That means, we haven't used any additional water to accommodate our growth. We need to continue that trend as much as we can. In terms of determining how much water we need to support our growth projections, we had to do some growth projections in terms of population increase. We looked at actually 3 different sources as we worked on this. We looked from the projections from the Maricopa Area Council of Governments. We looked at the projections from the state demographer, who's out of the Office of Economic Opportunity. And then we had some local ones created out of the planning office based on building permit data and historical trends. It happened to be that all 3 sources were very close in their growth projections, and the group ended up deciding that they wanted to go with the state demographer's numbers, so that's what we're looking at here. So according to the state demographer, Casa Grande, over the next 30 years, and this is a 10-year plan, but a lot of the analysis is in the 30-year horizon, simply because we had good data for 30 years, and so there's no downside to looking out a little further. But for the next 30 years, the projection is that Casa Grande is going to essentially double in population. If I looked at what this breaks down to in terms of numbers of new homes per year, it's about 750 new homes per year. This year we're going to do more than 750. So the numbers, we have to take a close look at them as building trends continue and we get the census data in from the 2020 census. But for now, the plan assumes a doubling of population over the next 30 years. We then, based on average persons per household for different household types, we analyzed how many new dwelling units we might need in the same time period. And you can see the numbers of how many additional housing units. There's no surprise, we have 23,000 housing units today, and we need about 45,000, basically a doubling of population, a doubling of the housing units. When we look at the number of additional housing units we need, which is over the next 30 years, which is that 22,276 number, they're not all going to be single-family homes. The assumption is that about 70% will be single-family, about 15% will be apartments, condos, or townhomes, and 15% will be manufactured homes or park models. Our experience over the last decade is probably that traditional single-family represented more like 80 to 85%. Manufactured park models were about 15, but we have developed very few apartments, condos, or townhomes over the last decade. We do think that's going to change into the future, and we think that these numbers are pretty realistic as to how the mix will shake out as we move forward. So to accommodate the single-family attached, we need about 15,500 lots to build on. And every one of those lots has to have a certificate of assured water supply under state law. So that's what our target is. Condominium sites do need cause. If you're going to sell the condo or the townhome fee simple, you do not need cause for apartments typically. So our next step was to really look at what we had in the community as approved certificates of a water supply, certificates of assured water supply, excuse me. And this data came from Arizona Water. They received it from ADWR. They helped us refine it, and then we mapped it. And so it was pretty eye-opening information. What we found is that today we have within the city 21,800 lots, vacant lots, that have approved certificates of assured water supply. That's good news. The other interesting thing is that about 7,000 of them are final platted. That number of 6,984 is much lower now. We probably have consumed about 1,000 of those lots since the writing of this report, or roughly, so we probably just have about 6,000 left. But the lion's share of those vacant lots with cause are in preliminary plats that will be coming back forward to be approved as final plats and have their infrastructure installed. And interestingly enough, we have about 3,000 condominium sites with cause as well, which allows us to, tells us that the market can actually build townhomes, condominiums, fee simple sale with cause. And we've mapped all those. You can see them, the distribution. They're all fairly compact into the, around kind of the developed area of the city. So the conclusion that we've reached from looking at this data is that we have enough water to meet our population growth and development demand over the next 30 years. We need 15,500 vacant lots. We have 21.8. Like I said, some of those aren't going to be available because developers are going to make development decisions to develop their land in a way that does not need the cause that's associated with their property. A good example would have been the multifamily apartment complex that you heard last meeting down on Camino Mercado. That land that was being developed for apartments actually has cause for single-family development. They're not going to be using it, so that's just going to, go away. The current rules under Arizona Department of Water Resources do not allow cause to be transferred from one property to another, so those cause get retired, if you will, to help make up what's thought to be the deficit in the water basin. But good news is we have enough approved certificates of assured water supply to accommodate the growth. What this also tells me, interesting enough, is without certain things like bringing new water supplies to the table into the area, or without somehow extending our water supply through like conservation efforts and reuse of effluent, that we kind of have a cap on the population growth for the community. It's around 118 to 140,000-ish. Not necessarily a cap on industrial development or commercial development or even multifamily, but for single-family homes, there is kind of a cap unless something happens in the, to increase the supply of water. So the vision of the water resource element of the general plan is to ensure that there is adequate water to sustain the city's desired future growth and development, to reduce our reliance on groundwater, to invest in sustainable water supplies, and to use the water we have more efficiently. To that regard, this graphic shows you that what the water demand in terms of acre feet would be as we accommodate that future growth that we just talked about. But that demand can actually be, the demand can be reduced by introducing additional conservation. So the blue bars on this represent what happens if we introduce conservation methods that reduce our use by 10 to 15% for each of our dwellings. We do things like be more sensitive in our industrial development to encourage development of industry that is not water intensive, or at least reuses their water supply or can reuse effluent. Other types of conservation methods that might drive our water usage down is certainly something that the plan is advocating for. So we have some goals. These are probably the primary goals in the water resource, which again is to implement water conservation methods to reduce the outdoor use of water. I must say that our landscape code today for non-single family, that would be for industrial, commercial, multifamily, is a good, it's a landscape code that has a water conservation kind of approach. All the plant materials in our landscape code are out of the ADWR and the Pinell AMA plant list, so they're good plants for xeriscape and low water use. So we really don't have much that we can gain for landscaping in those sectors. The real use of water, for outdoor use of water, is in the single-family residential area, which of course is the most of our land is in that. Think about back to that neighborhoods, that's over 50%, maybe 60% of our land use, with no regulatory approach to conservation. There are economic approaches by doing water tier pricing, but that penalizes for higher outdoor water use. But I think we have some work we can do in that area, so we're going to be looking at that.
Could you allow for smaller setbacks, smaller yards?
You could allow for smaller yards, because smaller yards use less water. Absolutely. Higher density development would use less water. You're right. Absolutely true. One of the targets is to reduce the daily water use per capita and the daily residential water use per capita. There's total water use and residential. The total includes the commercial and the industrial. The residential, of course, is residential, by 15% from the existing levels. Also, to maximize the use of effluent as an alternative to groundwater in appropriate locations. You know, we have 15,000 acre feet of water that we use annually in this community that comes into the system, and we have about 15,000 acre feet that goes out of the system. We only have a few direct users of that effluent today. We have a lot of opportunity to use effluent to meet our water demands as well, and we need to continue to think about those and work on those alternatives as well. And lastly, to develop additional water supplies to reduce the dependency on groundwater from the Pinell AMA, which means bringing water into the Pinell AMA from outside the AMA. So that's the water resource element, and which is, of course, one of the foundations of the plan. The other one I'd like to talk about, the major change, is downtown redevelopment. That was a real focus area for us. And so kind of a simple guiding principle to encourage development in Casa Grande's downtown to strengthen existing business and add further vitality to the downtown area. So how did we do that? Well, we created a new downtown land use category. You can see it in sort of the pink area on the plan. And as we thought about that and worked on the new downtown land use category, the discussion was, you know, there's not much opportunity for new development in the downtown. There's not much vacant land in the downtown. Most of it's, if we want it, we can redevelop some of it, right? We can tear down, rebuild, adaptive reuse of existing single-family homes. But what we did do is we expanded the downtown area to pick up some vacant land. And you can see it. It's in the south side, like the entryway off Choo Choo Highway, and it's on the west side with on the Gila Bend Highway. So we've expanded downtown, if you will, for the future to the west and to the south, providing opportunity for new greenfield development as well as redevelopment of the existing businesses and lots. We specifically have standards in the plan to encourage the development of new higher density residential development, also to allow the construction of vertically mixed use buildings with commercial on the ground floor, residential above. There is direction, though, that new development is required to complement adjacent historic buildings, because we want to certainly preserve the boutique form of the existing downtown and not destroy that. We'll be very sensitive to that as we encourage new development in the downtown area. That buildings and site design should have a pedestrian orientation, wide sidewalks, can accommodate outdoor eating and sidewalk display. Encourage the conversion of existing single-family into live-work units or small commercial uses. We do have a lot of existing single-family homes in the downtown area, especially on the east edge of the downtown area, and to the south as well. So some of those single-family neighborhoods would just remain single-family with a little bit higher density, and some will convert their dwellings into, for example, offices, art galleries, restaurants. Think Bedillins, I think, is a good example of what can happen in some of the residences downtown. Encourage public art, and development would have a maximum floor area ratio of 3. To visualize what that means is a floor area ratio of 3 means you can have the same amount, 3 times the amount of building area on your lot as you have lot area. So if you have a lot of 20,000 square feet, you could have 60,000 square feet of building. That doesn't mean you build lot line to lot line, but it could be that, you know, your building is 5 stories tall and you have some of your lot still dedicated to parking or to stormwater or to landscaping, plazas, those kinds of things. But it's fairly intense urban development, not downtown Phoenix urban, but more intense than we have today. We have some specific goals. We talked about the residential development opportunities, but also to create new landscape, stormwater management, and parking codes that recognize the unique characteristics of downtown. Downtown is not like the rest of the city. When you have a business and you have to introduce landscaping, it's got to be more urban landscaping. Stormwater management is more of a challenge because you don't have room for big retention basins on these lots. And of course, parking is different because a lot of people can walk to the business, walk between businesses, and so you don't need the same parking requirements that you might in the other parts of the city. And you can see the rest of the goals that kind of talk to the design aspect of the downtown that I've been discussing that the plan tries to achieve. So there's a lot of focus on revitalizing downtown in the plan. The other thing there's a lot of focus on is increasing housing choices. You know, I mentioned that today about 85% of the new dwelling units we build are single-family detached homes. We reviewed a bunch of them tonight. You see them in every planning commission meeting. The other type of housing that we're developing is manufactured homes. So between single-family detached and manufactured homes, that's about what we're building in this community. That's sort of what the housing choice is, other than, at least for new construction. So the plan talks about trying to increase the opportunity for housing choices, especially for what we call, you know, middle density, like the 10 DUs per acre and less. It's not high density. It's kind of more of a smaller density, smaller apartments, single-family detached single-family rental, duplex developments, things that, offer affordable, often alternatives to single-family detached homes. So one of the ways we did that is in the neighborhoods land use category, which today does allow higher density development at 18 DUs per acre. I think at a maximum site size of 25, we also allowed medium density residential in the neighborhoods with a 10 dwelling unit per acre max as well. So we allowed, in addition to the high density, we've introduced the medium density in the neighborhoods. We've controlled the amount of it in the neighborhoods area. Again, it's maximum site size of 25 acres. And the medium and high density residential is limited to 20% of the land use category. And it's actually 20% within like a half-mile radius. But the idea is that you can't develop the whole neighborhoods category with medium and high density. It's still primarily a single-family, low-density land use area, but we want to allow additional opportunity to have small, medium-density residential developments as well. We also modified the community corridor land use to allow development of residential housing a little bit higher, 25 DUs per acre. So we have community corridor in different areas of the city. We revised the commerce and business land use category to also allow the development of multifamily residential and mixed commercial residential buildings with even a little bit higher density in the commerce and business. You may have recalled that we've had some prior developments come before us where they were in the commerce and business land use category, but they could not put their apartments into their PAD because of the current general plan did not allow that. So we've eliminated that barrier and allowed apartments in commerce and business, a little bit higher density, but again, there is a limiting factor within the commerce and business category. We actually even allowed live-work units in our manufacturing and industrial land use category as on a limited basis. And of course, I mentioned that various types of attached and detached medium to high density housing would be allowed in the downtown land use category. So we made various changes in almost every one of our land use categories to try to encourage additional medium and higher density housing to provide additional housing choices to the community. You can see the goals here that we hope will be achieved with those changes over time. I think we're just trying to increase housing choices. That's the goal. And, the market will do that if we don't have the regulatory barriers, I think, in the way. Rural heritage, we definitely want to continue to preserve the rural and agricultural heritage of Casa Grande. That's very important to the community. We did combine the two categories. The one thing we have to keep in mind for the rural and ag areas, bless you, is that they allow for low-density residential development. So if you think about kind of the development east of the interstate, north of McCartey Road, that kind of area, would be beautiful development in our rural areas. So rural areas, they can be lower density residential, they can still be on septic, they can be served though by Arizona Water. They're not subdivided, so often they're not subdivisions, so often they don't need cause. But we can put lower density residential in our rural area. Of course, continue farming and ranching, both personal use and commercial. And one significant change is we are suggesting that utility level solar facilities can also be appropriately placed in the agricultural area, the rural area, versus the industrial area. So I think You know, you probably can see some of that happening in the unincorporated area of Pinal County now with some developments like by 11 Mile Corner. You can that's sort of where utility level solar wants to go because they don't need water, they don't need wastewater. We probably don't want to use our industrial land that needs that infrastructure for this kind of a use. So, you know, of course, this isn't zoning. We have to figure out what zoning districts and the zoning process and the approval process for allowing utility level solar to locate in the rural area, but we think that's where it should appropriately go. We have a series of rural preservation goals that are very similar to the rural preservation goals that we have today in our general plan. They implement the preservation of our rural area. And here's some other ones as well. So the name of the branding of the general plan for this general plan is A Growing Horizon. And it was that because there is a lot of emphasis on the plan with economic development and kind of the changing nature and character of Casa Grande as it continues to urbanize a bit based on economic development activity. So the plan advocates to continue to strengthen Casa Grande's position as the industrial and commercial center of Pinal County and to drive community growth through the creation of high-paying quality jobs versus just being a bedroom community. So there's a lot of emphasis on job creation, industrial development, and commercial development. I'm not going to go through all these goals, but every one of these goals really fits that mantra, and that helps implement the idea of driving economic development and new jobs. One of the exercises we went through as we created the general plan, after we created the land use plan, is to look at, well, do we have enough land in each of our categories, our land use categories, to accommodate what we believe is our anticipated growth? So in the neighborhoods area, do we have enough land in our neighborhoods to accommodate those 15,000 new lots that we're going to need to create over the next 30 years? The answer is we need about 4,200 acres of residential land in our neighborhoods. We have 33,000 vacant acres in the city limits and 38,000 vacant acres in the neighborhood in the planning area. So clearly, plenty of land to accommodate single-family development. Same thing on commerce and business, even to a greater effect. We have more land dedicated to that land use category than we think we're going to need for a long, long time. In manufacturing and industry, that really wasn't the case. You can see here that we think that we're going to, based on what we envision the growth in manufacturing and industry, that we had just about the right amount of land in the city to accommodate the next 30 years of growth. You don't want to have it that tight. You really want to have the ratio of demand to supply, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, to allow lots of different choices in site selection. So we knew that we needed to increase the amount of land in the manufacturing and industry area, but we needed to increase it, we either had to increase it in the city or outside the city. The decision was to increase it primarily outside of the city. You can see the purple, which is the manufacturing and industry, and you can see the yellow, which is the city limits. So we increased the manufacturing and industry land use category for some land in our planning area to the west of their existing industrial area and to the south of our from like Selma south almost down to the 8. We intend to, in the annexation section, it advocates for the city to annex that land. And so, we have been in already some contact with many of those property owners, and and everyone's been very receptive that we've talked to about wanting to annex their property. So we need to expand our industrial land. We think those are the appropriate locations to expand it into to accommodate our need for over the next 30 years. Another one of the foundations of the plan and the guiding principles was infill. Infill existing lots to accommodate development. And infill is very beneficial to the city, because if you think about it, if you look at this area and you see all those vacant lots that all have the potential for being developed, you know, we have water mains in front of those lots, we have sewer mains in front of those lots, we're running police and fire trucks and cars past those lots every day, we're picking up trash, we're maintaining the streets. We can develop those lots. When those lots develop, there's a very small incremental increase to the city's cost to provide municipal services. So those are very beneficial fiscally to the city, and it's just good planning to do that. There's really a focus on trying to infill, and you all know when you drive through the city, you know, we have lots of vacant land that's sort of been jumped over for whatever reason, as development has occurred over the past 20 or 30 years. So this plan sort of focuses, let's infill those properties to the degree possible. So there are goals of encouraging and promoting infill to direct growth into those areas. Maybe most importantly, tool that we can consider is to revise our impact fee structure to encourage infill development that has a lesser impact fee because it needs less urban services. And the state law actually allows us, communities, to do that. That we have not done that, but that's something I think that we should seriously consider, and the plan recommends that we think about that. Promote the construction of new residential dwelling on vacant infill. You know, we saw one tonight with a rock subdivision. That's classic infill. There was a vacant lot, took it, said, okay, it's big enough for 3 new lots. Let's build 3 new homes there. I know we had some testimony against it tonight, but I'm convinced it's going to be nothing but positive for that area. Infill, new construction, you know, in infill areas really enhances the quality of life and the property values around it. And you know, I'm a huge advocate for infill, if you haven't figured that out already. But I think it's really good. And to that regard, I did mention that our current general plan has 4 growth areas. We've taken them and broken down, we simplified them to be 2, and we have phase 1 and phase 2. The plan has goals and policies that say, look, all development should happen within phase 1. So I'm going to tell you a few things about phase 1 growth area. 1, it contains all of those subdivisions with approved vacant lots with approved cause. Every lot with vacant lot with approved cause is in phase 1. Phase 1 is the extent that we can serve properties with our current wastewater system and plant. We can't provide sewer beyond phase 1. It's as far out as we can do with our current plant. We can build another plant and serve it, but our current facility can only serve phase 1. In phase 1, we analyzed whether or not we had adequate vacant land in phase 1 to meet our growth demands. And we have like, you've seen that other table, so the details are in the plan, but it's probably 5 to 10 times more land that's really needed to accommodate growth in the next 30 years is located in phase 1, with one exception, which is that manufacturing industry that I just mentioned. And you can see we're gonna have to annex some stuff into phase 2, put it in the manufacturing industry, and convert it from phase 2 into phase 1. The plan actually talks about, you know, when there's a request to develop in phase 2, how you transition and make the decision to move something from phase 2 into phase 1. It's pretty simple. Does it have adequate infrastructure to support development. That's kind of the key. Does it have water? Does it have sewer? Can we provide city services? If the answer is yes, you can move it to phase 2 and to phase 1. So we do have growth areas. Most of the rural is in the phase 2. Most of the other land use categories are in phase 1. There are some exceptions to that, but in general, that's a good way to think about it. Redevelopment, the plan also talked a little bit about redevelopment. You know, I've used the Casa Grande Mall as the example here because I think it's classic example of something that could be redeveloped. It's in the community corridor category, which means that this redevelopment could include multifamily. It's now, with the new general plan, would say, yeah, you can put multifamily here, you can demo, or you can just build new multifamily in the parking lot in front of the businesses, and maybe that makes the businesses, you know, more viable because they have more people living next to them. There's some more opportunities than the current general plan, which for that particular community corridor land use category. So we've developed the uses in the category, and we developed you know, some goals that allow redevelopment to occur as well. Neighborhood strategy areas kind of go hand in hand with redevelopment. They're combined into one section. And so we have these neighborhood strategy areas, and this map represents them. You know, I'm gonna, you know, I guess if I was gonna characterize them, I'd characterize them as the west side, the south side, the east side, the core of the city, and an extension of a portion of Florence Boulevard where like where we just looked with the Casa Grande Mall. We've also acknowledged that opportunity zones provide some tax incentives for development, and we've put those in the mix here. You can see those on the screen. Some of them go into our existing neighborhood strategy areas where there might be opportunities to get tax advantages to developing as well. Sense of arrival and entryway. So this is kind of, you know, the idea was sometimes when you enter into Casa Grande from the various, you know, directions, whether it's the north, the south, the east, or the west, you don't really have a sense of arrival that you're here. This is kind of a classic one. This is north on Pinal. You know, when I get off the interstate and I drive by this, and I'm sure this is everybody, they drive by this sign and there's like, there's nothing there for a couple miles to the south. So what the general plan does is, you know, we've placed this land in a category which is community corridor that allows for more kind of an urban kind of node of development around the entryways. When I say urban node, that means it could be some residential, could be some multifamily, could be offices, could be commercial, could be recreation. There's a whole range of different uses that are allowed to try to facilitate and encourage development at the entryway. So the plan doesn't talk about signage necessarily, but it talks about developing nodes of development at the entryways so you kind of know you've arrived in Casa Grande. But we have only put those where we have infrastructure, where we have water and sewer and can actually develop it. This site actually has water and sewer pretty easily, readily available to it. And good access as well. So create a sense of arrival with the major entryways, cultivate a unique sense of place throughout the community through different design techniques. So you can see the various goals that we're recommending, the plan recommends in the community corridor. I can tell you that community corridor is put, like the name kind of suggests, not only at the entryways, but at some corridor areas. So community corridor would be on Pinal from Florence north to like maybe Courtson. On Florence from Pinal east, probably all the way to the interstate. On Cottonwood from Pinal over to maybe to Hennis. And then maybe, I think even Hennis down to, from Cottonwood down to Florence. So it looks at those kind of corridor with major roadways where the development's a little bit more intense and can be a little more urban. As we looked at what's actually happened in like the Treckle corridor, maybe from McMurray up to Cortson, that's kind of, a lot of that is like already the kind of character that the urban corridor is trying to achieve. So actually we have a pretty good example of it that happened kind of, I guess, organically. I don't know if it happened because of our regs. It might have even happened in spite of our regulations, because if you think about some of those buildings, they're kind of closer to the street than we would have today, and they have the parking wrapped around the back and the side, and they fit really well with the adjacent residential and multifamily and office. They're all kind of mixed together in that area, and they really work quite well. So it's a little bit of going back to the future on some of that. Managed growth, we already talked about the phase 1, phase 2 areas. I'm really not going to cover that anymore. I think I've done an adequate job of that. We are required to do a transportation and mobility element, and as I mentioned, Dwayne Itel, our traffic engineer, worked with that with his consultant, Amy Moran from Wilson and Company, and in conjunction with our transportation planners from the Sun Corridor MPO, who all are engaged in transportation planning efforts in the region, in the community. So they redid the transportation element, which has an emphasis on a multimodal, looks at a new major street network. They tweaked the major street network, looked at what changes we might need from today, where we might need to add corridors, where we might need to remove corridors. We had a lot of debate on whether or not this should reflect the I-11 corridor, which has not been finalized by ADOT yet, so the decision was not to reflect it on here, although we're hopeful that it's going to essentially follow the Montgomery Road corridor to a certain degree, but that decision is not, as I mentioned, has not been finalized. So this is our major corridor map for arterials and minor and major arterials. We also looked at the transit network, and Council had recently reviewed and adopted a transit plan, and so this is the transit plan that was recently created, and so that was embedded into the general plan as well. And then the trails network, the current plan does have a trails plan. We looked at that, revised it where appropriate, tried to show some links that have already been constructed and what trail corridors have yet to be built in the cross sections that they're intended to be built to. See how I'm doing on time. About done. Sorry to take so long. But so where are we now? We're kind of at the end of the project. We have a couple key steps left here. We have a city council study session, not on October 1st, but on October 19th. Sorry about that typo. So on 19th, I'm going to make essentially the same presentation to city council. On the 20th of October, we're going to do some kind of a online public meeting engagement. We're still working on whether or not it's going to be like Facebook Live or a Zoom meeting or WebEx or how we're going to structure it, but we want to have an online presentation or even a series of online presentations to provide the public with information and opportunity to provide comments. Technically, the review period ends on November 1st. We're going to compile the public review comments from November 2nd to the 5th. The steering forum is going to meet again on the 5th and to review all the comments that have been made, both through the website and from anything I received from commission, from council, from the public. We're going to review those and incorporate them into the plan as appropriate. And the planning commission is going to be asked to hold a special meeting on November 19th to hold the first of the public hearings required by state law. The planning commission is required to hold 2 public hearings by state law at 2 different locations. So we're going to ask you to hold a special meeting at the Community Rec Center. Hopefully, we'll at least be able to do social distancing in the big room and accommodate probably as many people as we need there. We'll be back into this chambers on December 3rd at your normal December meeting for your second public hearing and vote on a recommendation to be forwarded to City Council on whether or not to adopt the plan or not adopt it, or whatever recommendation you might have. Council has elected to hold a public hearing on December 21st as well, and then council will be voting on the adoption and scheduling for the public vote on the January 4th meeting. And then by state law, we're required to have 120 days between that council action and the actual vote, which is why there's such a gap till we get to the special election on May 18th. And we believe that's going to be a total mail-in election. So with that, I'm going to stop and see, if you have questions, comments, or if there's, if you would like to do anything addition before this comes back to you on the November 19th. You will vote on December 3rd. After you've held 2 public hearings, you will make a vote, just like a zone change, on a recommendation to City Council.
I just want to let you know that on the east side of the freeway with the agriculture area, we plan to keep our aroma for you guys, so you can, okay.
Gotta keep,
Always thinking of it. Thanks, Dennis.
smell money. Gotta keep that up.
Anything else?
Not at 9 o'clock at night.
All right. I'd agree, right? Thank you for that riveting presentation.
You're gonna have to cut a little bit of it out if you're gonna get this for an hour for the council.
Yeah.
They're gonna interrupt you so many times in this.
All right,
Whoa, you're calling out the council?
That's good feedback, thank
I
you.
know that.
Thank you for that feedback, we'll adjust accordingly. Appreciate that.
In the downtown area, you want all this development, which is great. The biggest challenge you're gonna have there is that railroad that with 50 trains come through there, and it's mandatory that they gotta blow that horn at every intersection that doesn't have you gotta put a.
Grade separation.
Yeah, it's terrible. That's the biggest challenge you're gonna have downtown. Till
You
put an
can
overpass
eliminate
there.
the train horn. They've done it
Until you
here.
put an overpass in there.
Yeah, it's called a
Who would
accordion zone.
wanna live down there
Train horn.
and a horn blowing every 20 minutes at night?
You get used to it. It's just like the smell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like
Like said, Maricopa does it.
Double
It
the
says
number
no
of
horn.
trains.
But it is, until we get an overpass.
here.
It'll be
It's
fine.
dangerous, though.
The smell?
Very dangerous.
It's about
Smell we
60
have.
minutes.
It's gonna be, go ahead.
No noise.
I wanna respond to that, I just curious.
So that's a good point. I mean, if I spent the night down there tonight in a house close, I would wake up every time the train went through, absolutely.
I
But that-
enjoy that sound. I can hear it from my house, and I can remember it from growing up here.
Okay.
I enjoy the sound of that train horn.
And I grew up with
I wanna-
trains going through, so, yeah.
So, but people who live close to train tracks, it's really weird. After a couple, they just get so used to that noise, it doesn't bother them at all. And that's really true.
And then they miss it when it doesn't come through regularly.
Also, I don't know how you put it, you want to keep it at a certain percent agriculture, which is absolutely great, but it's extremely hard to do it because once development comes to you and the farmer or whoever owns agriculture land, they're going to start getting offers of over $100,000 an acre. And as the city grows, that will happen. It almost happened here before the recession hit. And so in order for the city's gonna have to they wanna keep so much agriculture land, they're gonna have to come in and buy it to preserve it. And that hasn't been done up in the valley.
You know, if you think about that, and because I'm not really advocating to keep it always as ag or rural. I'm just advocating that we need to keep it in that category until there is water and wastewater infrastructure available to provide service to it and to develop it. And today there's not, and there's probably not in the next 30 years, the ability to get water resource and wastewater resource to those areas outside of Growth Area 1.
Yeah.
I'd like to respond to the railroad thing, because in the proposed general plan, it does talk about grade separations and the need for them as new development takes place. So the plan does accommodate some of that. It doesn't address what do we do with Amarillo and Florence Street and so on and so forth, but it recognizes the fact that that's an issue and will be a big issue as the city grows and develops.
I got one other question I gotta ask. You know, you had the population projection, and you got the 2020. You had a 2010. How close were you from 2010 to 2020? How close were you in that projection from 2010 to 2020? Were you pretty close?
Within a couple hundred people.
What's that?
Within a couple hundred people, yes, very close.
Really?
Yes, extremely close.
Wow. That is good. I can't believe that. Within a couple hundred people.
Yes.
Even a stopwatch is right.
That's right. Even a blind squirrel gets a nut once in a while.
Yeah, I give you a gold star for that.
Yeah, but, thank you for this presentation.
Yeah.
I appreciate the good summary of it.
It may have.
Excuse me, we haven't opened this up for public comment.
This is not a public hearing, this is just a presentation.
That's right, I can't. Just trying to get us out of here in time, guys, okay? I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
It is good, so.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Whoa. Whoa.
Are we skipping things?
Yeah, we skipped things.
Oh, reports?
Yeah, we got reports,
We have to vote.
major
We don't
site
have to vote.
plan, administratively approved, Board of Adjustment decisions, council decisions.
Okay, I'll go through these very quickly.
I mean, I got a motion and a second on the table. They'll have to show up next meeting.
We did approve, Joe did approve a minor amendment to put this back on, for Cardinal Glass, but for a fairly large addition, 6,479 square feet. You know, I'm just gonna digress real quickly on this for just to let you think about something is, you can see the size of that building, and then you know tonight you did another building that you had a major site plan on, which is essentially the same size, the one on Grant, right? Because we don't have, pardon?
It was half the size.
No, it was 6,000, wasn't it?
3,250.
Okay, all right, okay. But we don't have good guidance in our code on what to classify as minors versus majors. So that's one of the things we're gonna have to work on, because, you know, if sometimes it's not good clarity, just to let you know. But the good news is, staff does not approve this on their own. The chair has to sign off as well. Okay, no Board of Adjustment. City Council did approve the industrial zone change for that property on Maricopa Casa Grande Highway. I think that was the I-1 or I-2, Joe?
What, I'm sorry. Yeah.
The I-2 zoning, yes. And then we gave you the monthly reports, and you can see that there's another strong month for single-family permits. And we ran this little bar graph for you to give you a sense of how many permits have been granted throughout the year, each month, just to give you an idea of what's happening. Last 3 months, have, of course, been very strong. I think we're gonna go over 1,000 permits this year, for the first time in a long, long time. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Stands, motion to adjourn.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
And-
yes, you can't get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is Linda's last planning commission meeting. She will be retiring.
26 years, right?
26 and a half
Well,
years.
the whole place is gonna fall apart.
It is, the whole place is gonna fall apart. We're gonna miss her. We're gonna miss her. Linda's done a great job. I don't know if anyone's gonna do as good of a job with your minutes, frankly. I mean, I've been in this business a long time, and those minutes are really, really good. So, she's gonna have big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Got 3.5 hours more of them to type.
Before you're done, that's right.
Yeah, thank you.
Second.
Who motioned it?
I got motion here,
Twice.
second there.
Twice.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, or
It's actually
Meeting adjourned.
for Tucker's last